Hello everybody, and welcome to the kind of unofficial first tournament kind of thing to try to figure out what the actual meta is for the Tactics Ogre multiplayer. Now, before we get started, just want to quickly introduce our rule set here. Basically, the way that this is working, any team can have whatever number of items. They have access to all gear, all of their stats are maxed out. Unique items are kept unique, and I mean, basically everything's allowed from there. The AI doesn't really understand how to use everything in the game, and sometimes it acts very strangely. So, at any rate, all of these teams were set up in a way where, when they're set up in multiplayer, you can select their AI, but they also have to have their AI set up separately in the single player. It's just roll with it. I don't know, it's just how they set it up. Anyway, point being, though, everybody's on AI. I've got no control on this otherwise, and I've just kind of been spending the last few months here tinkering around with different teams to try to figure out what a meta might look like here. So this is the first one. This is the team that was suggested over and over and over, and I basically put it against just a random endgame team that I had from a while ago. So we'll go ahead and get this one started. It'll be running on fast forward for the most part. Because I want to make sure that we're not here for the next 8 years trying to get through all of this. But all right, let's go ahead and get this thing started. So Spork Fury here, basically a team from a challenge run in which I was trying to use every single class in the game, basically resetting everything to level 1. Well, pretty much the entire run through. Twisted meta here, a team that is made up primarily of archers. With some frontline ninjas, obviously making up the front line, as you'd expect. Now, of those frontline ninjas, one is a skirmisher running a short bow. As you'll see over the course of this entire test, they will repeatedly be running skirmisher builds. This is basically anything that refers to a light weapon and shield for a ranged unit, instead of going for the heavier longbows or heavy crossbows. The reasoning for this being that while those heavier weapons have higher single hit damage, you can actually get more viability out of lighter weapons. One more little rule that wasn't covered earlier is the fact that most of these units will be, not most of, everybody will be subject to 128 times skill experience, and most of them will be starting off at anywhere from rank 1 to 4. The reason for this is because it allows for the skills that would have been maxed out to be maxed out, while the ones that are clearly not meant to ever have been maxed out, like for example parry, deflect, overpower, and some of the racial skills for monsters, those would end up still staying relatively low, probably maxing at around 3 or 4 over the course of the fight. I know this seems a little bit weird if this is your first foray into any of these videos. This is actually the third video in the set here, attempting to try and cover the crazy rabbit hole that is this multiplayer. But yeah, each of these teams are given different selections of items for different reasons. So, like, for example, you saw right there, the Jigla set is one of those things that will come up very regularly over the course of this fight here. Basically, it's kind of a litmus test as to whether or not somebody has built for resisting elements and has also managed to, resist anything else. In the case of the main character of this team, they were a warlock with almost no defensive skills on them, so they simply got one shot. However, the Jigla set can almost be entirely glanced off under the right circumstances. So, for example, attenuate almost never gets used over the course of a normal playthrough, but it is incredibly strong in multiplayer. If you didn't know, attenuate basically ranks down any incoming damage. Through a combination of being able to control the map's prevailing elements, as well as just kind of different resistances of different units, you can kind of negative scale a lot of the more powerful options in the game. Now, the reason that we start off with this fight is just to show you what was expected to happen. This is just basically, showing that the ranged units, just archers in particular, tend to constantly be held up as this unstoppable force that can just crush everything. They've got good, consistent damage against most things, but as you're starting to see, their damage is far lower than it would be against the AI. Sure, they're still slowly but surely chipping away at this team here, but this is the bottom of the barrel. This is just a team that was not made for multiplayer whatsoever. Now, the reason for this, and I know this is the third video explaining this, but most of their damage, additionally for this ninja as well, comes from bonus damage. Now, the way that the game calculates things, it's got an armor system, it's got like a stats versus system, and then it's got a bunch of bonuses. Basically, if one unit physically overpowers another, they'll usually do pretty good damage. If they get past their armor, they will get a bunch of bonuses, though. So basically, like in the case of monster units, their actual maximum damage isn't super high, but they are pretty consistent. When it comes to people, though, like for example, if a knife goes against somebody that's built like an absolute tank, it'll just dink off. If it goes against somebody that's very squishy, though, it'll end up, taking away hundreds of damage. Bows are much the same way. Their actual penetration value isn't as high as the single-player game would lead you to believe, because comparatively it's fairly low, but the AI does not get access to endgame armors. They do get access to the lower end of endgame elemental weapons, but they do not get, for example, the elemental vests. They don't get access to the elemental armors. They just simply don't get that stuff. Even the endgame bosses do not get that stuff. In fact, I believe the AI with the most intense equipment isn't even like Tartaros or somebody that you'd expect, but actually Cressida when she's in her recruitment mission, because she can come in with a Medusa shield of all things for some reason. I'm not sure why her stuff is so up there, but everybody else will basically be locked to Wormscale and Mask of the basic variety. In fact, there's only a couple NPCs that even have access to the +1 versions of some rings. But, that's just kind of how they decided to balance it. It should be noted that this is actually perfectly fine balance-wise, because this kind of end point where ranged things end up becoming incredibly good, melee weapons can actually reach those same heights. It's just the fact that they don't usually manage to get in close range as often as the ranged units manage to find their targets, resulting in this kind of stuff. Now, there we go. We got, endgame longbows doing 20 damage. Yes, they're basically running phalanx right now. The AI loves to target units using phalanx, and that particular knight, I believe, is one of the ones that was actually built for having intentionally low defense while using phalanx, which allows them to basically tank a bunch of hits, because the AI doesn't know any better. It can't help itself. It's still calculating the pre-phalanx damage. But yeah. As you can see, they're not really going to have a whole lot of a shot here, though. They're trying their best. I mean, if we go ahead and take a quick peek at the numbers here. Go ahead and interrupt it real quick just so we can see what's going on. We can see that only one archer's gone down. One is currently disabled. The rest are in pretty solid shape, though some have been given some debuffs, and this team is certainly not having a good go of it right now. So we can go ahead and mark them down for our first loss. The way that we're handling this tournament is going to be... Whoa, that's crazy looking. I basically have to have the tab key taped down in order to keep this whole thing going, and I switched over to my spreadsheet only to have all of the buttons go absolutely crazy. Alright, anyway, we can go ahead and mark them down for their first loss. So this is Spork Fury. Again, not a team actually built for multiplayer in any capacity. We've got a few teams like that, but we'll come to them as we will. I think this is already a point where, yes, we can safely call that they do not have a realistic opportunity to bring this back, because, yeah, they've already lost most of their team. This is clearly not going in their favor whatsoever. They don't really have any big kind of turnaround moves that the AI would know how to use. And we'll go ahead and move on to the next one. Alrighty, next up here we have the Regulars, another kind of endgame team not built for multiplayer, going against 110% Hustle for Sports. This is a team that was, well, funnily enough, built on the Super Bowl, made entirely of bad sports puns, with the sole intent of using all of the builds that worked from the recent class tournament. Basically, just a bunch of weird ideas that, well, you probably would never want to use in a normal situation, but the AI loves to make use of. So, for example, a warrior that is running an axe and a bunch of water augments in order to throw out a bunch of spells while they're getting in close. Or, for example, just a hell of a lot of skirmishers, or, just wizards doing the earth thing, because those are consistently reliable in most situations. But yeah, you'll see a lot of skirmishers. Now, I mentioned skirmishers before. The reason that they're so dang good when it comes to this is basically because thrown weapons don't really get their due in the single player experience. By the way, this right here is a weird quirk of the Medusa shield. For some reason, almost always a unit using it will stand behind one of their own team. I couldn't tell you why. It's a very strange time. It's just something they do. don't know what to tell you. I've tried putting them in the front row. They have deliberately gone backwards in order to make sure not to get the most effective use out of it. Yeah, no clue. Okay. So this hustle team, it's definitely expected to win this. Like, again, a lot of these are kind of just in here as a measuring stick. This endgame team is the one that was from my more or less first save file of the game. Nothing too amazingly fancy about them, just kind of a bunch of reliable and fun to play with classes, a lot of rune fencers, rogues, Vart, and all that kind of thing. And that was actually one of the only times I ever used thrown weapons when playing this game, because it seemed like, they're a good, reliable weapon. And then people kept telling me, no, go use longbows instead, they'll do more damage, and that's the funny thing. Thrown weapons, like if you're looking at a comparison between your ranged options for your team, you've got bows, so you've got your short bows and your long bows. Short bows are pretty good for debuffs. They've got both silence and stun options available to them. In fact, short bow +1 is a very good early game stunner, especially with Tremendous Shot, which guarantees a secondary effect. If you didn't know, 100% moves always guarantee secondary effects, so you can actually do a lot of crazy stuff with early game items. Like Mighty Strike with a Claymore +1 will give Breach, or I believe one of them ends up... actually, most of the Damask stuff ends up having stun on it, so that's very good there. Because, as the joke before, not all the Damask stuff just happens to be stunning. But alright. So one of the reasons that this team is in here is to show you that despite not being built for multiplayer, something as dumb as Silent Light can actually do a hell of a lot. In fact, the AI loves to harass using it, because they'll hit units that can't even actually cast anything, but it doesn't matter because the AI will keep looking at it and thinking, wow, this is definitely something that I need to get rid of. And yeah, they'll be so friggin' distracted with that it doesn't even matter. They'll gladly throw away a turn just to make that happen. Alright, so this is a pretty thorough trouncing, as you can see here. Part of the reasoning behind behind some of those light crossbow builds, by the way. When it comes to scaling, everything's going to scale a little bit differently, and especially when it comes to stuff that scales damage, it's a little bit funny because a heavy crossbow will occasionally do the exact same damage as a light crossbow, depending on the kind of armor involved. That as long as there isn't an elemental resistance, in some cases, yeah, your light weapons will do as much as the heavy ones for a finisher. Brimstone Hail is one of those ones where, you can have a unit just build up a whole bunch of TP and essentially wipe out half a team. Yes, the AI doesn't really understand the concept of waiting till the TP bar is filled up all the way, but they still will occasionally pull a big boom kind of move. All right, anyway, we'll go ahead and get to the more interesting fights here, though, because as you can see, these guys they're not having a good time. They're getting thoroughly run over, as is to be expected. All right, now who do we want to do here next? I think next we'll go ahead and have all of the unique characters fight. Yeah, I think we should probably mark the ones that have already gone before. Just up here, we have the Snowflakes, a team made entirely of unique classes, going against the Byzantines, a team made entirely of ice, primarily ice elemental zombies. So you can make a lot of really weird themes for your teams, as you'd kind of expect. But I just wanted to show these two in particular, because yeah, this is a weird matchup, because uniques have that weird thing where they can't actually be turned into zombies, which wouldn't normally be a big downside, but it certainly feels like it was less of a... well, I'm sure partially it was because they didn't want to fiddle around with adding extra sprites for everybody, but it does kind of unintentionally seem to have created a multiplayer balancing act, because in many cases, zombies will end up being stronger than uniques if nobody's brought enough exorcisms. Which is why the unique team here in particular happens to carry, I believe, 4 different exorcism sources with them. So when it comes to the Byzantines, we're talking about zombie hoplites built for spamming evade. They've pretty much most of the rest of the units there have icebergs for their swords, which are not amazing, but, whatever. The Griffins are all built for stealing health, because one of the downsides of zombies is that they are unable to heal themselves. Unless, of course, they happen to get that health from somewhere else. So yeah, they'll gladly end up getting themselves vaporized early on with the express intent of being able to just come back later. Now, when it comes to the revive strategy, usually you want to use fast units for this. Reason being that they can get instantly vaporized. Like, for example, Denim over here is using a combination of the Brynhilder and Eracian, which the Eracian is one of the items that gives you an instant exorcism if you have it. So you can use Exorcism 2, I believe, with that one. You've also got I've also got one of the staffs that gives an exorcism. And usually, if you back them up with something like a Necromancer, they're able to immediately get themselves back up, or if they're a fast class and there's enough distraction going on, usually the AI won't make a big deal of exercising them. Using Clerics is a solid idea. It can work. But using, for example, a Knight that is made invisible with a Stinky set and has an Eracian in the other hand is probably the strongest kind of healer support plus exorcism that you can put together. Because, if the cast is free, they will be far more likely to use it. In this particular case, yeah, the Eracian is free. It's a big exorcism. It's quick to use. They're not really going to think twice about getting rid of a Griffin, rather than, for example, attacking. So as we will see here, the first one on the chopping block for the Snowflakes is almost always going to be Vice. His defense is low pretty much no matter what you do with him. He is basically a super ninja, and that unfortunately comes with the fact that, yeah, his defense is absolute trash. So there he is, getting sniped for 400 with an ice bow. If you may notice, that is the same damage he was putting out with the Jigla set. So it can be done with other weapons too. There's a lot of really circumstantial things. I forget if he had Isoverse on him. I'm not going to go back and check. That probably might be part of the reason that he was getting so much damage there. So the Griffins at this point have made it all the way inside. They don't always do that, and it seems like Stun's actually doing a fantastic job against the Uniques here. This Byzantine team here, they're kind of slow to get rolling, and that's actually part of the reason that they were named the Byzantines. They are themed after the AoE 2 Byzantine team. Kind of the walls being represented by the Griffins there. But yeah, they're very good at spreading out debuffs, and if they can manage to close in all the way, they're usually pretty good at putting shutdowns out there. Their head Griffin is the one that's putting stun on everybody. They usually will end up surviving a solid amount of damage before just dropping that on everyone. They've got casters. I believe they've got a Patriarch in their front lines that's able to throw out all these stuns consistently. And yeah, so far that is 2 units down for the Uniques, for the Snowflakes here, and only one of the Griffins has been exercised. As far as the guy with the barricades, it doesn't often seem like those would be a solid choice, but if you've got a frontliner unit that's just generally causing chaos, puts down some barricades, and an AI happens to be stuck on the back of that, combining that with spear users can be very solid. And meanwhile, these Griffins just keep repeatedly eating themselves back up to health. The Snowflakes are trying their best to get some kind of hold on this situation. One of the Griffins goes down, but they've still got 2 of them just absolutely causing chaos in the front line here. Denim going for the exorcism there. As he does, he'll almost always end up prioritizing that because he'll usually have enough MP built up. Because the Lord can do so many things that usually they don't think too much about how much MP they're using. But yeah, pretty much the rest of the team is able to run around with impunity as long as these Griffins are out in the front row. We've got some very odd choices coming out of Yuria here, going for a stagger instead of anything else. She does have a lot of decent moves. It seems like they're mostly getting the Griffin situation under control. The hoplites are apparently just showing off how good their defenses can be. And in case you're curious, the reason that this map was chosen for the Snowflakes as kind of their home map, so to speak, generally the idea is that it causes units to be funneled towards them. They've got a lot of AoE moves. They've got a lot of very specialized hitting abilities, and so being able to handle stuff at range without being overwhelmed by melee units generally tends to be an easier time for them. Also, it allows for potentially healing off any range damage that comes their way earlier, but we'll see how it all ends up going. Oof. Okay, so yeah, already we're seeing more stuns doing more work than you'd potentially expect in a kind of a end game scenario here. Stun is one of those things that kind of gets seen as being very weak, but it's easily one of the strongest debuffs in the game, especially considering that it's one of the first ones you'll ever run into. Yeah, solid fight going on here. It's actually leaning towards the Byzantines a little bit here. They have a bit of a hard time actually landing a lot of their damage, but again, they just sort of come back as long as they're not exercised. And currently the main exorcist, we've got one exorcist that's currently being pressured on the front and one that is currently disabled, so that Griffin has a pretty decent chance to actually come back here as long as that pressure continues. As you can see, those ice weapons, they're not very good until they end up getting their stuff ranked up here. But they're going for Ice-averse, they're going for stacking that bonus damage. You're getting about 15% bonus damage every time that happens. So we've got their Ogre set now in the front line, trying to do everything they can to stop this. We've got Judgments coming out of Kashua. She's basically seeing throwing out these big numbers as more important than dealing with any of the downed units. Again, that is more Denham's role in this particular situation. And that is the first time I've ever seen Deneb actually use Magic Time. When it comes to the AI. Like, some of their abilities, they got to be pressed into a corner to actually use, and which kind of makes me wonder if we'll actually end up seeing Evanescence get used later. But there we go, one of the hoplites ends up going down. I believe that was one of the hoplites, and yeah, they are still down several units, though. If we take a quick little interrupt here to see what we're actually looking at number-wise, as Vice fades away, and it looks like we're running about equal here. There's more, there's currently more zombies standing, but they are not in the greatest of shape here. So we'll see what ends up happening. That Griffin ends up coming back. There we go. Evil lands, putting out some solid damage there. Actually lands with the Ogre set. An unexpected absolute champ of this multiplayer mode here. Easily the strongest thing you can build for him. I mean, I guess technically you could go... I believe he actually can't use the shield. I think what I was trying to go for originally with that guy was Ogre set combined with the Brynhilder, but no, apparently not. So, alright, so we've got another Exorcism coming in through Holy Water. One of the better Exorcism abilities because it is an action move. It seems like... okay. One of the zombies goes down. Yeah, Scattershot is very strong regardless of who's using it. Like Snub Fusel plus Scattershot is pretty much a guaranteed somebody's going to die every couple of rounds kind of situation. As you can see, Holy Weapons absolutely shred zombies. It's not... You'd think it would be more considering the, the whole Final Fantasy situation, kind of making that a staple. I'm sure it came from other places first, but I'm just saying that's generally people's first experience with it. But yeah, no, it's usually about 20-30 something % extra damage, unless it's Baldur. Baldur has, I believe, like 50% bonus. So yeah, Baldur Dagger probably going to be doing more than a lot of endgame Holy Weapons, but it depends on the situation. I believe it also ignores part of their defense as far as all that goes. Yeah, it's looking more like it's towards the snowflakes now. Let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them standing. Only 5 of the zombies still standing. 3 of them are down, so they could come back, but it's unclear so far. Speedstar on Azelston. Dude's just quick. Yeah, meanwhile, those Griffins continue to harass. They're very hard to shut down because of how quick they are. I mean, they're basically regenerating health with every round. They're consistently putting out pressure with every round, and a nice parry counter from Azelston there. Yeah, never underestimate how good parry can be, but it just has to roll first. Alright, we got more lasers coming in from Kashua. She does a pretty solid job of that, and yeah, with that Exorcism, I'm gonna go ahead and say that this is probably a shoo-in for the Snowflakes at this point. But there we go, another evade coming in. The Byzantines were never expected to win this one. The Snowflakes are expected to probably come in second, but, the stranger things have happened. I have seen this go the completely opposite way before, as Azelston still continues trying to put some damage out there. He's kind of building up all of his points whenever he's not wasting all of them on Speedstar, because the dude just wants to run. Kashua's lasers, as always, just consistent pressure coming out of those. Alright, can the zombies actually make some more headway here? Probably unlikely. Those icebergs are just not very good, unfortunately. They have a very hard early start. Yes, they would have been far better served with better weapons, but dang it, we had to go for the ice theme on this one. It just had to be done. Okay, went for a check over anything else. Strange call there. Demon Rose misses. We got Meditate coming in from Deneb, going for Petra Bursts. Okay, fine. Yeah, I'm going to say this is probably towards the Snowflakes. We'll give this a couple more rounds here, but I don't really see any way that the Byzantines are coming back from this one. Oof, especially from ones like that. Then we got Heavenly Judge coming in. Oh yeah, that is definitely the, that's interesting. The AI actually knows how to use Heaven Judge, strictly for exorcism over damage. That I would not have expected. You know, you learn something new every time. Then again, they still have a Griffin. They haven't actually gotten any knockdowns in the last few rounds, but I mean, it could still happen. But not if they keep getting parried. That one Griffin is just having a really, really hard time. It just gets parried at every turn. It's just a bad time for him. Alright, we'll go ahead and call it there and move on to the next one. Alright, next up here we have Dreadnought versus Red Menace. Now, Dreadnought is the team kind of expected to win this whole contest here. They're more or less built as a counter to most things that have come up over the course of this little experiment here. I believe they are running 15 items on their team, but they are expected to lose a few units, revive those units, and essentially keep putting on constant pressure through their actual living units here. They managed to pretty consistently keep pressure on most types of teams while still generally retaining a lot of survivability. The warrior with the crossbow up there is running both the Ogre set and I believe one of them is running the... No, it is Trafalgar, the Terror Knight that's running around with the Ogre set, while we have the Stinky set along with a Fire Crest over on the front warrior there, allowing him to more or less remain invisible except for counterattacks. They are the only two that are actually given the ability to use items, while everybody else is intended to try to put on consistent pressure and or shut down the team. The Fusilier and the Archer are expected to be the bulk range damage dealers, while most of the casters are intended to poison and or put enemies to sleep. Yes, those two basically run counter to each other, but as you can see, they're already fawning over this one cockatrice at the front, and most of that damage is unlikely to stick. Now, the Red Menace team was built entirely with a meme in mind. Basically, was listening to a Sabaton song that day, and well, you probably know what it is if you see what their team's about here. Now, that being said, unfortunately, this team became a bit more relevant to real-world events than intended, so we'll just go ahead and ignore that fact and just, you know, stick to the fact that it's related to that song, and that's it. Now, they are primarily Fusiliers that are expected to get knocked down, survive 1 or 2 hits, and then go back to firing Scattershot. This essentially means that after a few rounds, they are, well, more or less 8 units running around with the ability to one-shot almost any unit in the game, while additionally having the ability to self-revive and self-heal. Meanwhile, the Cockatrices are expected to more or less sow chaos on the opposite side. This is actually probably the most successful I've seen Petrify ever work. As we can see here, it's actually managed to land looks like 4 times in a row, which yeah, that never happens. Most of the time it just misses. So, you know, that's a thing for sure. We see that most of the Fusilier team, while they do have 2 that are absolute powerhouses, most of them are forced to run the Bandishimaki, which is still a fantastic weapon in its own right, but they're barely doing above 100 damage at long range, but they still do that damage consistently. It's very hard to actually dodge them. They cannot be deflected. That's something that you really don't see a whole lot of as far as stuff that comes up in the normal single-player experience, but as you can see right here, it's actually doing pretty solid. They'll usually pick a weaker unit and chip away at them. But then we've got the Necromancers essentially bringing them right back while still managing to throw out more pressure as they move forward. Looks like this one has decided to petrify a Cockatrice. Sure, it's a little bit hard to tell who's doing what on each team at this point, and these are 2 zombie teams that are essentially going to be going against each other. But as far as I recall, there's only some exorcisms on the Red Menace team, I believe coming from their forward Patriarch, whereas on this other team, there's believe 2 units in the form of the necromancers that can just banish. Now, one of those is currently asleep. We'll see if they get taken out. That actually could even the odds pretty well in their favor here. As I said, the Dreadnought team is the one that's favored to win this by a pretty wide margin for many reasons. This kind of consistent pressure and support at the same time is pretty much why. But either way, let's see, they're throwing out more of their finishers. This is still an absolute fusterclock towards the center here. It's a little bit hard to tell who's going what on each side, considering it's just a giant pile of statues and bodies at this point. But yeah, it looks like the luck does not continue for that cockatrice. But there's certainly more petrification coming in from the other side. And talking about how shields can't... funny note, actually, they say that shields can't withstand their shots. Shields can! You can't deflect them, though, so weapons can't. But that's neither here nor there. Now, the main downside of the Red Menace team comes not from their offense or their consistency, because they've definitely got those in spades, but the fact that they're slow. Unfortunately, they do have to take time to reload those old-timey muskets, and so they take absolutely ages to get back up and running again. They'll usually shred the enemy team down, come back, and, well, end up taking ages, probably losing a couple of units, and then coming back for another volley. But that's why the cockatrices are there up in front, to hopefully absorb some of that damage. We've got to do with the ice axe here. It's not the strongest axe by any means. Most of the ice stuff actually seems to be bizarrely shafted as far as damage goes. But it is notable that, yeah, he's actually an ice build that works. So we'll just go ahead and go with that. In fact, I kind of feel like ice only might be a fun challenge to do at some point, but that's, you know, that's whenever that happens. Alright, so it looks like... no, it's just one gigantic mess in the center. It really just kind of comes down to who starts exercising who here. There's some good rolls coming in for Red Menace. They seem to be getting slightly better damage RNG here. Yeah, as soon as one goes down, another goes down for the opposite side. It's a complete mess of just a bunch of zombies and everything else. One to one, and will anyone actually exercise anything at any point? That guy over there, he's probably building up his death whales right now. We've got light crossbows throwing damage that are light crossbows doing more damage than guns. Now we've got their Jiggler Orc in the back sniping people as they do. Yeah, lots of light crossbows over on Dreadnought. I've mentioned this before. It's, I would argue, the strongest weapon in the game by a pretty wide margin. It's just solid in its own right. It gets it gets a lot of benefits from a lot of different setups. It's lightweight. It's got decent range. It's got a stun effect on its normal shots, and additionally, you know, Death Whale is just, nothing survives that. Alright, for some reason they're trying to scare a dead and poisoned chicken. Alright, whatever works, you just do your thing there. Yeah, total mess of a fight here. Let's go ahead and give it a little quick interrupt to see if we can figure out what on earth is even happening. Yeah, 400s coming from a light crossbow there. So we've got, well, slightly better numbers on Red Menace, but still, they're about even here. Really should have used some better tape over on this tab key. Unfortunately, I have to keep it held down in order to keep the fight going on fast forward. Should I have mapped it to something else? Yeah, probably. But guess what? I didn't. Alright. And again, will anyone ever remember that exorcism exists? Now, in case you're wondering, an actual complete softlock situation is not actually possible between these two. So the way it goes, and something that we'll see more and more as time goes on, eventually one team will start getting more and more prevailing element stacked up on the map. This basically means that if a certain element is repeatedly used, well, it ends up either getting stronger or weaker depending on what kind of element we're talking here, since light and dark work opposite from everything else. This essentially means that eventually somebody will gain ground. I believe part of the reason for that feature, aside from just flavor, is the fact that, yes, it does tend to break stalemates over time. So, yes, again, it's going strongly towards Red Menace right now. I believe the first one to throw out an exorcism will likely be the one that wins this. But it's unclear so far, and nobody's actually willing to do it yet. especially since any units that are coming up are getting kept down by that Jigla zombie over there. And it seems like we're getting some pretty solid moves out of Red Menace, actually. They're doing a good job of just keeping everything timed up just right here, as another one ends up biting the dust, only to come back later. Let's see, they're pecking away at some statues. Sure, why not? Now, will those necromancers decide to do anything useful here is the question. I don't know. We just have to wait and see. Something's bound to happen. We got 2 petrifications coming out of that guy. Looks like 8 Ball is coming back with his crossbow and a banish. There we go. That'll be the move that does it. Because they got 1 and they took out 1, and there we go. So I'm going to say odds are pretty strong at this point that we're going to be seeing Dreadnought winning this, but it's too early to tell. It can still go either direction. I don't know where they're... I got to double check at this point if they even... if that Patriarch is even still in play here. So we got this guy, we've got this guy. Yeah, the Patriarch is currently down. So, I don't know, maybe he'll come back at some point. He's got one thing left to go. But if he whips out that staff, well, we're probably going to see a decent bit of problems coming their way. And he didn't use it. He came back up and he decided not to use it for whatever reason. That's unexpected. Alright. Again, just comes down to these exorcisms here because these shots are ridiculous. There we go. Another one goes down. Once they get rolling with those scatter shots, the damage becomes, really, really, really hard for anyone to keep up with. So, it actually still can go either way. I'm going to say it's very unlikely. Basically, the warrior with the stinky set has to be knocked out entirely. Everybody else has to be completely off the map in order for him to actually die. So, eventually, regardless of their damage, we will run into a situation where either he dies from counters, or everybody else just ends up getting overwhelmed. And there we go. First those shots does... Wow. Yeah, that's the Jiggler set in a nutshell. The first shot misses, the second one crits and one-shots them anyway. But again, both of these teams are very lightweight. They're not actually expected to take a whole lot of punishment. And, so on it goes. Kind of tempted to... just kind of let this play out and just go do something else for a while until it's done. Alright, so while we're waiting for this Fustercluck to finally resolve itself, a couple of little fun notes that might help for building your teams. So, anytime that I was going and getting units, like for example those orcs over there, or whatever else, I decided to try and use legit methods for this one. So basically, if you cheat somebody into a class, they won't end up using the right racial template and things like that. So instead, I ended up just using the Ogre Blade to rename units as kind of you're intended to. No, I don't know why they decided that would be the best way to do it, because that basically means you need to redo the entirety of the Palace of the Dead in order to rename any orcs or whatever else. Fun note on that, though. Apparently, some things, like as an example, a lot of the beast units, not all of them, just a lot of them, things like golems and whatnot, you can't actually use the Ogre Blade on them. I'm not really sure why. I guess they just wanted to prevent them from potentially having skills that they can never use or something. Either way, that's just kind of a weird note there. Additionally, ended up getting a little distracted there. Random stuff going on in the background. So, I mean, at this rate, yeah, it's basically just coming down to whenever the necromancers decide to come back and banish somebody. And, well, we can see that when it comes to Red Menace here, while they do have some fast units, for the most part, the slow firing speed of most of the rest of their team is causing them to very slowly but surely end up getting whittled away here. So I'm going to go ahead and call it in favor of Dreadnought here, because this could go on for quite some time. I have tested these two teams against each other. It's actually... I have seen Red Menace win this particular fight before. It's just that they got to get really lucky, and also it took like 3+ hours. So we're just going to go ahead and call it there. Up here between two very, I would say, unusual teams. So we've got the Lotus Knights, basically the starter characters or starter generics from Knight of Lotus, all remade with various builds with kind of that general vibe there. Wait, whoop. that was strange. I don't know what the alternate or regular speeds are here. Anyway, so they were all kind of given a sort of Knight of Lotus theme. Yes, they do have a Fusilier. Yes, Fusiliers didn't exist for Knight of Lotus. Hush, that's fine. Anyway, and then they're all matched against Lance a Little here. So this was a strange challenge run team from ages ago, in which I kind of just tried to see what would happen if you went through the entire game using only Rune Fencers. The result was you get nearly soft locked about 3/4 of the way through the game because, well, you basically have to get Cocriums for everybody to not have completely crap damage. Because for some reason my dumb self didn't want to look up where I could find the crafting books in order to get some of the better weapons anyway. So it wasn't a complete soft lock, but it felt like it at the time. But just results in a weird pointy boy build, as you do here. But I figured this might be one of the few opportunities to see people actually spear fighting each other, so screw it, we're going to make that happen. Again, this team is entirely a meme. It's not really expected to actually get anywhere, but we'll at least give them a shot. I figure this is probably a bit more of an interesting matchup than most. So when it comes to the Lotus Knights here, there are 4 Angel Knights, each of them given different attributes of that particular class. So, for example, one of them is going to be running around with Rampart Aura. One of them is going to be running around with their Charm AoE move. We've got some that are going to be running around with their TP reset move. Their zombie move, or the zombie reset move, which again is just one of their sing-song kind of dealies. I've never seen them use it, so I believe the AI can't use it, but again, this is why I've left some of the skills on certain people that I don't believe they can actually use, because as we've seen last time, I never saw Deneb use Magic Time before, but sure enough, there she did. And I'm fairly certain I've seen the AI use Evanescence before, but again, over the course of these last few months of testing this, I've never seen them do it. So there might be some oddly specific circumstances in which they might. I mean, I'm thoroughly convinced that under no circumstances does the AI have any idea how to use any of the flight rings or anything like that, but who knows, maybe if they get cornered, maybe there's some secret thing that no one's ever figured out that makes them do that. I don't know. Maybe putting them on a healer AI will make them do that. Oof. You know what? These guys are actually doing pretty okay so far. I mean, granted, that was more looking cool than actually being effective, and that particular move did a whole lot more, but oh well. I would be very fascinated to see one of these better built teams just lose to a friggin' meme, but you never know. So these guys have been a total crapshoot from start to finish, when I'm talking about the Lotus Knights in particular. Sometimes they do really well, sometimes they do absolutely awful. Just kind of depends entirely on how long those Angel Knights last. The support line behind them is fairly robust. Their shooty guy is very good at dealing out damage. They've got one of the tankiest healer. Actually, I believe they have the tankiest healer in this entire contest. Their archer's pretty solid, although not running the Jiggler set. They specifically do not have that. I wonder if it was intentional that when they redid... Okay, just a weird thing. The Jiggler bow looks a hell of a lot like the Sherwood bow from Knight of Lotus. Just saying, I don't think there's any actual relation to anything there. It's just kind of neat. So yeah, as we... Oh wow, actually I was going to say as we see the Lance a Little here is getting crushed, but you know, it's not looking entirely awful for them. I mean, they have made some gains here. It's theoretically possible, and once they all start getting Spiral Scourges, stuff should get pretty interesting. I'm actually a little bit surprised. That particular challenge run ended up going to... I think I ended up leaving the save file towards the beginning of Chapter 4. Just because it was kind of endless grinding trying to get those Kukriomes. But the strange thing is, I don't believe... I don't believe any of them actually ended up even getting rank 3 spears somehow. I'm not sure how I so badly flubbed that. Then again, most of them didn't have anatomy either. It's just one of those cases where looking back at a lot of old save files, there's a lot of stuff you can potentially do, like once you know the mechanics of the game. It's actually been pretty fun going back to old runs that, you know, I thought were soft-locked, or I thought were broken, or just undoable. And then just going back, and it's just like a few quick little adjustments tends to make that team absolutely overpowered. like going back to my original save file and figuring out just how many things I could have potentially adjusted. Like nothing was optimized. So, you know, I do wish that they had made the optimizations a bit more clear on this one, but they were too busy, you know, making it a whole big gigantic game. Like, I wonder partially if it was their experience with making Vagrant Story, because for that one they did try to go into detail with all the different mechanics and give you like 40 different guides in the menu. And then for this one, they're just like, make attack number go up, and it maybe beat defense number, and then you do big number. Okay, have fun, have a good time. Has the story made you depressed yet? So, I don't know. I feel like maybe that was part of it. But let's see. Yeah, so far, Lancelot has lost twice as many units. I don't think they're going to have much of a chance. Like, realistically, I just don't see it happening, but... Alrighty, next up on our list, we have Zealots versus Corpse NATO. So this is a weird matchup. And by the way, the entire test here almost just got ruined by the sex taco. If anyone's unfamiliar with the thing, if you accidentally hit data install on a lot of versions of this game and cancel out, you end up with a corrupted save file. I had it on fast forward and accidentally wound up in a situation where it ended up creating that. It ended up crashing. It ended up resulting in this version where it kept asking to resume every time I tried to tell it to do something. Now, unfortunately, for some reason, this also came with updating this thing and also disabling fast forward. Hang on, let me check that real quick. Forward is back, thankfully. So we can go ahead and take this piece of tape off my keyboard and put it on the controller. Sure. That works. Anyway, so, whole deal with Corpse NATO. They've got 3 relatively tanky Swordmasters up front. There to throw out buffs and debuffs, hopefully get some charms off. They've got a Golem that is meant to basically run around causing chaos and keep everybody locked into one place. Meanwhile, the entirety of the sides of the map are expected to be covered in these rogues. They've got no armor except for a ring or accessory of some kind, and then have a mix of light crossbows, heavy crossbows, and blowguns. They essentially are built with the entire purpose of taking one strong hit, coming back with a death wail or other finisher, being knocked out, and then coming back before anyone can exercise them. Now, the Zealots, on the opposite end of this, are a team built entirely with holy weapons in mind, basically to just absolutely shred undead units. They don't have a whole lot in the way of exorcism options, but they don't really need that many either. All they really need to do to beat an undead team is get 1 or 2 exorcisms off, and that'll basically do it for them. Let me go ahead and double check real quick, though, because I feel like... Nope, 128 skill rank is actually active. I just wanted to be absolutely certain, because, again, had to switch to a completely different version of PPSSPP and delete that file in order to clear up the bug that we were dealing with, but, yeah, so Heaven's Tear, as you can tell, it crushes. It does a decent amount of damage. Now, the thing with that Golem, unless somebody has a few very specific counters, Baldur Golems, I wouldn't say they're broken. If somebody's got debuffs, he can do very little against debuffs. If somebody's got the Jiggler set, he dies instantly. But to almost anything else, their defense is high enough that they probably won't even draw aggro. So again, defense so high that they probably won't even get targeted. But we'll see how this ends up going. They do have a Cleric over here on the side to hopefully get some of those exorcisms off. That Cleric is reasonably bulky, so they do tend to stick around a lot longer than a lot of the frontline fighters. They do tend to shred zombies, but again, it all depends. There's so many it depends type situations where a team even that's completely outmatched can potentially just bring it back through some good positioning that they didn't even expect to do. That's what makes watching these so dang fun, you know? It's like right there coming in with an Ancient Dragon Shield, putting out some poison, basically getting rid of somebody at the cost of poisoning their own unit. I mean, that's probably fine for them. We'll see. We'll see how it ends up panning out. Holy Comet doing its thing there. Yeah, Holy Comet thoroughly, whether it's intended as a Castlevania reference or not, a Holy Comet will completely annihilate undead units. Like, a lot of the Holy Weapons will, but that one in particular just sticks out. Because we're talking a thing that goes from doing like 50 to units normally to doing almost 200. On paper, it's supposed to only give like a 20% bonus, so yeah, I'm sure some of them have some hidden stuff, like Baldur, for example, does actually have a hidden about 50% damage bonus, even though it only says like 15 or something on the actual stat sheet. So some of these guys, for example, will be carrying around Balder daggers with the express purpose of using those in place of some of their more conventional weapons, as it were. We'll see how that ends up panning out for them. Most of them have access to items to keep them going, since they are expected to make one big push and hopefully take out enough undead units to be able to make a bigger push forward. We've got Habrim over there, completely forgetting he's got one of the biggest potential damage hits in the game and just going for casts instead, of course. Why not? I mean, why wouldn't you, of course? Alright, and they keep putting them down and keep putting them down, but are they going to be able to actually push through? They've only had one successful exorcism so far, I believe. They're still trying to cut through, but I mean, we'll see. The nice thing about clerics, by the way, and actually one of their unique anti-undead counters here, more so than their actual exorcism, is the fact that they can area heal and damage at the same time. So it is actually worth keeping spellcraft on a cleric for that reason. They are pretty reliable. Like, this doesn't seem like much, but this is consistently getting them forward. More petrifications coming out with that original Lucht reference sword there. The Makwahatl. I didn't actually look up... You know, I probably should look up what that means, because I don't know. Now, the thing is, the AI does not know how to revive, so they will not be able to revive. Any units lost on the Zealot team will just be lost. So, let's see. Makwahatl. Makwahatl is... Oh, it's one of those Obsidian Sword Club things. Okay, well, that's... I mean, that's most certainly not what that is, but alright, fair enough. I guess that makes sense. I kind of thought there would be a bit more to that. I guess I really should have figured it was one of those. But yeah, if you've never seen one, it basically looks like a, what the hell is that one weird, we swear it's not golf sport with the, like, paddling oar things. Anyway, it's like a big oar-looking situation with a wider oar part where they just shoved a bunch of, like, obsidian, like, teeth into. And yeah, apparently in this case it just makes them petrify things. It's interesting because some of the kind of use item things actually have a lot more uses than you'd expect them to. Like the Makwahatl in particular, I think it has like 4 or 5 casts of the Petrifog there. Mostly it's meant to be as a reference to the original Lucht, but it's just kind of interesting how that goes. Yeah, it kind of looks like the Zealots are actually getting pushed back here. As much as they're built entirely for dealing with this kind of map here, and despite the fact that this is their home map, this is the one that they're expected to function best at, because they're usually good at functioning in a blender, and especially making use of that AoE heal there. They are simply getting outsped by the sheer DPS of Corpse NATO. That is where the name comes from. Getting slowed down a little bit by debuffs and all that kind of thing. It would be cool to see Corpse NATO actually make some decent headway here. They're not really favored to win it overall, but they are expected to get reasonably far because they are very fast. I mentioned during the tier list, I believe it was either during the tier list or the second video there, the rabbit hole, that I did make a team specifically for speed, and this is that team. That they are leagues faster than everybody else. No, they don't have griffins. Potentially replacing a couple of their units, like especially a couple of their swordmasters with griffins, might be a pretty solid improvement. But overall, it does the job, so who's going to complain? Alright. Now, yeah, they're having a hard time making any of these gains stick, unfortunately. I believe they're only... We should see what happened to their Erasean user, because that's probably their best way. I believe that was one of these guys. Oh, right. Suppose we should probably deal with that real quick. There we go. Now that we're not skipping around everywhere. So their Erasean is Jane over here. It's actually a little bit odd that she hasn't actually done anything with that. Alright, moving on. Let's see if she does actually try to make some headway for her team here. Because if she can get rid of a couple of those downed units, that would give them a really big shot. It seems like they're just going for a full, just forward charge. And, yeah, that's not working out so hot for them. They're getting thoroughly blendered by that golem they don't want to do anything about. Double hit or double impact is a very strong thing, but unfortunately, yeah, they're just going really, really slow. They do tend to rely on making one big hit and then kind of hopefully regrouping from there. Okay, they get one exorcism. Are they going to get a second one off her? No, she's busy using items. That was about their only shot here. Yeah, they're getting very thoroughly trounced now. And there goes Yunin, the head of the Zealots, and I think we can safely call this one. Although, wow, their golem actually goes down, surprisingly. You don't really tend to see that this early on in the fight. And there's still, you know what, there's still 5 of them, including their cleric. Maybe they can pull this back. Because it's mostly debuffs, they've got a whole bunch of units in the way. It's possible they can do this. Is it likely? No, because most of these guys are ranged, while most of the Zealots are melee. Yeah, wow. Yeah, they're having a bit of a hard time here, that is for sure. Their cleric gets petrified. He's not really doing a whole lot to help them. Still spamming items to try to keep themselves afloat, but that guy needs to come back and help them soon. Otherwise, there's really not a whole lot of pushing they can do, as they keep trying to peck away at him with different ranged weapons, but he's one reasonably tanky cleric. But it seems like they're getting their way here, as we get the obligatory sad one mend leaf here. Okay, going for the brimstone. That's not really going to do anything for them. It's really not. Yeah, I think it's safe to say that they're probably going to be bowing out at this point. All right, moving on to the next one then. All right, I figure I should probably mention one more thing here, that while I was waiting for waiting to adjust all of the stats in the spreadsheet and whatever else, they have actually made a pretty solid push, making it up to their front line here. No, they have no chance of pulling it back because they lost their cleric in the process and they're getting completely pounded by death whales now. But they did actually finally make it to the front, but unfortunately they were just way too bogged down to make it. On to the next one. And now we move on to the final fight of round 1 here. We've got Pyroclasma versus Ogre Filthy. So Ogre Filthy is entirely built around being able to kind of outlast the other guy. The tanks in front are meant to just tank damage for as long as possible. You've got poison coming out from the octopus. You've got some undead flavor in the form of that ghost that keeps coming back. You've got an invisible healer with their knight there, again doing that whole thing where he runs into the back of one of his friendlies to fire the Medusa shield. I don't know what the hell that's about. And yeah, you've got the gremlins and the fairies going for just general trickiness, all that kind of business. You've got boost abilities coming out of their tamer over there, but we'll see if she actually ends up using that. Meanwhile, over on the what's her face, Pyroclasmo side. They're the ones that are going strictly for overall pressure. They've got charms, they've got poisons, they've got petrifications, and they're basically all fire based. So we'll see how that works out for them. They got mixes of poisons and venoms, a few other little debuffs here and there, but for the most part they're going for poison and charm. Yes, those pretty much all of their specializations are mutually exclusive, but it's fine. Don't worry about it. It actually ends up working out a lot more in their favor than I may potentially expect. Not a whole lot of undead flavor on both of these teams, but again, just kind of some of those token ones over on Ogre Filthy, just to have somebody that comes back. See, the thing is, the undead units, as you saw in that last fight, under the right circumstances, they can get absolutely shredded, so they're pretty much giving themselves a massive weakness to some of the more common strong weapons in the game. While giving them the ability to revive. Meanwhile, everybody else can more or less just full heal themselves with items. So it's not really... it's kind of a strategic thing. If you have a unit that's able to be revived and able to make it to, say the front line, and then you have somebody bring them right back to life, then suddenly you have somebody that's a fantastic way to harass, but it's all situational. Everything in this dang game is situational. That's what's made figuring out a meta for this so dang confusing. Reason for the fire dragons. They do breach. Pretty much all the dragons have access to their stun move. Or not stun, I think it was like stagger or something like that. They've each got 2 types of breath. Generally speaking, I think fire ones are just the best anyway, because it also gives them the ability to walk on lava. I forget what the bonus is on the water ones. Actually, I think water one might have been breach, fire might have been a weaken. Something like that. Okay. So let's see here. Let's kind of a massive mess coming in here. Like, I would assume Ogrely Filthy will probably win this, but it's an entire unknown. See, the thing with Pyroclasma is, yeah, they have pretty constant pressure. If they can surround, like, they will occasionally just entirely surround the opposite team, and that's when things start getting absolutely crazy. They are kind of the kings of the Fustercluck when it comes to this tournament. They've probably got some of the most unexpected pressure, because, again, Poison is one of those, well, Poison and Envenom and Charm, they're all things that don't seem terribly threatening at first, but then once it starts coming out, I mean, they're getting that initial 200, plus potentially getting 100 damage per round for free. So as long as they keep pushing that out there, which they will, because they're right on the front getting pretty decent hits the entire time, they've got Tactician to keep boosting it. As you can see, those Poison Breaths will keep coming out consistently. There's a reason that their defenses are a little bit lower than everything else, because they need something to balance them out, because hot dang, they kind of shred is the thing. Now, the thing to consider on the opposite side, though, when it comes to Ogrely Filthy, they have some of the most filthy stuff, as their name implies. So, Invisible Healer, giving them support the entire time, who was supposed to petrify a bunch of them to help them close in range. He doesn't do that very reliably. They've got Mass Bewitch right here. Speak of the timing there. You've got Petrification coming in from their ninja over there. The Enforcer is probably one of the strongest units in this entire contest. That's the Terranite over there on the left. Ogre set plus Damask Crossbow plus whatever the hell it's called, the Thingamajig, the Firecrest. Man. By the way, weird note, somebody actually did a full write-up of the entirety of the kind of like plot line if you combine together all of the Ogre games and Final Fantasy Tactics and Vagrant Story and all that, as well as some of their newer stuff. And yeah, I actually never realized that the Firecrest is basically just mentioned as like the thing that the good guys supposedly had in the first Ogre battle type dealie. I guess it's more or less officially confirmed that all of them are canonically related. I mean, it's been assumed for ages. Let's not mince about that, but yeah. Either way, so as you see here, total complete mess of a fight here. Who the hell even knows what's going on? But those fairies, if they start getting their stuff going, oh man. Stuff gets nasty. Because here's the thing: Bewitch, unless you have a cleric, you're not cleaning that up. The only two units off the top of my head that can actually deal with Bewitch are going to be anyone that has access to ease. So basically, only clerics and rune fencers. So yeah, this is kind of one of the reasons that I kind of keep rune fencers as probably my favorite unit for all this type stuff. Because they can do a little bit of everything, including being able to get rid of Bewitch. Right, let's do a quick check-in here to see who's actually doing what on each team here, because it's like, visually impossible to tell what the hell's going on. Also, Hydras, when petrified, tell me that's not hilarious looking. Oh, okay. Anyway, so it looks like only one down on each side. There was an exorcism that came in for Ogrely Filthy. So, yeah, Pyroclasma is technically ahead on the unit count right now. Is that right? Probably. I'm just going to assume it is. But yeah. Overall numbers-wise, it's not looking great for them. Like, Dragon Boss over here is not looking too hot. Their Ghost is about to pass out. That's going to give these guys a little bit more push potential. As you can see, they're actually holding up pretty darn well. So yeah, I'm going to say this is leaning pretty heavily towards Pyroclasma at the moment. Which, yeah, that's good to see. The thing that I love about Pyroclasma here, they don't have a whole lot in the way of Exorcism. They specifically only have a couple of units that are able to do it. But the cool thing is that they're able to put out enough consistent pressure to basically do the Knight of Lotus approach, where they knock out everybody at the same time. And there we go. What a comeback, you know? What a comeback. This is part of the reason that they're kind of given limited items. They haven't been spamming them. The lower item count you have, the AI seems to use them less often. So this basically means that if somebody's low on health, they totally will use the crazy big items, but they won't spend the rest of the time using 50 mend leaves on themselves trying to get themselves topped off. I'm not sure what the breakpoint is. Again, as I mentioned in previous videos, I feel like it's around the 1 to 2 mark, or around the 5 to 10 mark. Sorry, I don't know why I'm mixing those up like that. Apparently going completely crazy on numbers, as you do. Still complete mess of a fight here. I'm really rooting towards Pyroclasma, though. I love that team. Like, just the fact that they've got no zombies and it's just poison. Like, just the fact that so many things are viewed as complete garbage in single-player absolutely rule in multiplayer. I love it. I absolutely love it. So, you know, Terror Knights doing 500 damage per shot. Like, it's just wonderful, you know? It's just, you love to see it. The cool thing is, by the way, even though some units can be rendered invisible with the Stinky set, that doesn't mean that they don't get hit by AoEs. They're still there, just nobody wants to look at them because they stink too bad. I love that logic. It's just great. And yeah, so, as you saw right there, another cool thing with that Terror Knight crossbow combo, if they don't have a good shot on anybody, they will just debuff somebody, and it tends to be more useful than anything else. They're probably their best thing, and the reason that it's great that it's a light crossbow and not heavy crossbows is there's times when they run in, they throw out Lament, basically wreck a bunch of defenses off units around them, and then follow it up with, sniping somebody. It's just great, you know? Oh, is that finally? Yeah, that's finally the ferry gone, so that's going to be a big help for them. Mr. Bernie over there, the Dragoon, he's not accurate. He tried to dedicate towards everything else, and in fact, let's go take a quick look at his skill list here and see what the hell's going on with that. So his skill list, oh, dang it. Keep forgetting to remove this tape off my controller. Yeah, his skill list is strange. He's meant to have lots of Bane abilities. As far as I've seen, the AI doesn't really tend to use those, unfortunately. But yeah, he's more or less constantly throwing out hits. I realized early on that, you know, they probably won't be using the Bane abilities that often, but dang it, you know, it's just... the idea of just this deranged lunatic dressed in all gold swinging around a fire sword like he's insane, you know what, it's just fun. Sometimes you just build teams just for fun, and they're doing well enough. Like, usually his role is to throw out either those Bane abilities or to throw out his Rending Gale, which, you know what, is fine. He can miss as many hits as he wants. He's still going to get his skills ranked up. And on top of that, he's able to... he'll scale accuracy with that ability anyway, so who cares, right? Yeah, so far Pyroclasma is doing great. They're actually making this work. I mean, I hope they get it. It's actually really funny to me that that they're actually managing to take out the invisible guy on total accident. And in fact, if he ends up putting up Guardian Force and somebody ends up targeting anyone around them, they could potentially finish him off. We'll see how it goes. Are they actually going to do it is the thing. Because, I mean, he's trying. He's being a good little healer. You may not think that, 40 health at a time is much, but he's doing it completely for free. You have to realize his role, like, his primary role isn't damage, isn't healing. He is essentially an invisible damage sponge. So, the way the AI calculates things, they will take a more risky move if they think that they can take a unit out, especially if they can do so with a ton of damage. So they will for example, cross the entire map, put themselves right in the open, try to finish somebody off only for Guardian Force to essentially absorb part of that hit. The unit is still alive, somebody's put themselves out in the open, and yeah, they're just suddenly in an awkward spot, so it's a lot better of a counter than it looks. Like, he's essentially slowly healing people. That part's not amazing. I think something to do with certain AI patterns determines whether or not they'll actually use some of their better healing moves. But yeah, it's just an interesting thing to potentially think about. And yeah, look at that. Look at that. Pyroclasma making some headway. A couple of their units still bewitched. Those Hydras can barely make a dent. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Taken out by his own guy. So yeah, their invisible guy is gone now. He can't soak any more damage for them. Can't mess up their plans anymore. Yeah, I would say this is probably a win for Pyroclasma here. The Enforcer is the only one that can actually still do anything here, and the main one that usually tends to make them nigh invulnerable is gone. So their first kind of layer of defense is gone. They're still an incredibly tough unit to actually take out, but once the big AoEs start coming in, they're just as vulnerable to poison as everybody else. So there we go, getting some poison on the skeleton. How poison works on something with no veins is anyone's guess, but what can you do? Okay, sad Mendleaf stumbles. That honestly, that's just fine. Yeah, Bernie somehow still here. He's an interesting unit, but there we go. 130 from that poison too. So that'll be the Enforcer going down relatively soon. They're poisoned. They're getting crushed by big boom moves. I love Pyroclasma. It seems dumb. It seems like a dumb gimmick. They're probably my favorite team so far, because you see like Hydra's getting dunked on as far as being terrible. Oof. 1200 damage. 1200 damage from a Terror Knight. Oh man. Oh, I love how filthy this is. It's so good. Anyway, but yeah, these are probably like two of my favorite teams in this entire thing. I don't expect any of them to make it to the absolute final, but oh, you gotta love it, you know? You just gotta absolutely love it. The cool thing is, with Bernie there, it wasn't his intentional role. Like, he was just supposed to be a distraction unit. Which, yeah, distraction units, totally a viable thing in this. But what I absolutely love is the fact that when it comes to finishers, for some reason he gets to draw aggro a lot more than most of the others. Couldn't tell you why. Maybe he just has a whole lot less kind of anti-damage scaling. Who knows? But you know, he tends to eat those big finishers. He tends to finish off his job that way. Let's see how these numbers are looking, because yeah, it's looking like all the Hydras are still up. The Enforcer is halfway down. These guys are on their last legs. Yeah, this is pretty safe to call for Pyroclasma at this point. They can try, but there's really not much that one unit, regardless of how overpowered they seem, could potentially do against this. You know what? In a certainly never say never kind of situation, basically the Enforcer has gone and taken out most of the rest of their team. So it just comes down to whether 3 Hydras are enough to take out 1 Terror Knight here. Because, yeah, they're still able to throw out 200s. It's kind of insane, actually. I mean, they're poisoned. It's not unrealistic that this 1 Terror Knight can actually take out all 3 of them now. Because they did... I probably skipped over that part, but they did do 1800 to the Fusilier earlier. Yeah, 2 of them left. They're probably all going to focus... Yeah, they're just going to end up focusing on this one. So she'll probably take on one of them. Can she actually do this? Because it's completely realistic that, yeah, she just wins this on her own now. Is it going to happen? Because 1 Death Whale will be enough to finish that one off. Yeah, they're stunned now. They're wasting the move that they need in the wrong place. And, yeah. Yeah, they pull it back at the last second. Look at that turnaround. So, yeah, Overly Filthy ends up winning it. All right. You know what? I said there was not much they can do, and they sure did. And let's move on to the next one. All right, so we get to the second round of things here. We've got Overly Filthy versus the Snowflakes. This one, it's hard to call. So I would say Overly Filthy probably has the better odds of winning this one. These guys, they do have a lot of options available to them, but they're not as good against monsters, I will say that much. And they've got a pretty decent front line of entirely heavy units. They are going to start doing quite a bit with Vice there, actually. So Vice kind of has a bad thing of constantly being a glass cannon. He pretty regularly gets himself stomped very early into many of these fights, and it looks like so far, yeah, no, he's actually going to get some pretty decent hits on this map as well. This actually probably should have been their preferred map, all things considered. But, well, until everybody's front lines get a little bit closer, it's hard to tell which way this one will end up going. I feel like the Snowflakes definitely have more... Oh. Okay, one little minor mistake here. Apparently I forgot to set him on AI. Just going to go back real quick. And the way that you handle this situation is you go back 1 step and turn their AI on. I kind of completely forgot that was a thing. That's fine. Alright, and back to it, pretending that never happened. So it looks like he's going to boost himself up a little bit. Charge on forward as he do. Yeah, I'm definitely leaning towards Ogrely Filthy. Like, they only have 2 units that are actually undead, so don't have to worry too much about the mass exorcisms that they're carrying around with them. This kind of map definitely very favored towards monster units. It is why it's their preferred map. I actually forgot to cover this earlier, but when you pick a preferred map, it actually puts you as the enemy in that particular map. Basically puts you in a technically worse position in most situations. So when it comes to this right here, we have a situation where they're basically coming in as the attacker side. It's a little odd. I kind of feel like they maybe should have had that the other way around, but I figure the logic must essentially be that they think, you know, you picked your favorite map, you can deal with being in a worse position on that map because you're already picking for map advantage, more or less. Because otherwise, you know, you essentially have an archer team, you constantly put yourself up on the castle walls, what's anybody going to do about that? So, it's understandable, you know, you can't really pick for your own advantage, technically, or that would be the assumption anyway. Though it does kind of create that situation where then technically anybody could come in with archers from that better position and just snipe the hell out of that fancy team that you were just building on. Although, as we've seen on this tournament, that's not exactly always going to be a winning strategy either. Anyway. Oh, look at that. Once again, targeting the back of a unit with the Medusa shield. Why do they do that? It's such a strange behavior from the AI on that. So the reason that I'm really leaning towards Ogrely Filthy winning this one right now. These second ones, by the way, I just kind of rolled them randomly, so whatever ends up fighting, whatever. I was hoping to potentially see Snowflakes versus Dreadnought at some point, but I don't think... I'm feeling like they're probably not making it that far. But it's just... with 2 of the unique options available dedicated on the Enforcer over here, I just feel like they're going to be the one that ends up kind of pulling what they did last time, to be honest. Like, in some cases, you can essentially have the entire rest of the team built entirely for just distraction or delays and whatever else, and that's more or less what Ogrely Filthy is. The first layer, like the octopus, takes a lot of the hits, ends up turning that around into a poison rain. The dragons are there to kind of bog everything down. The fairy runs down the middle, starts getting Bewitch going. The rogue gremlins snipe until they do something similar. You got your item support guy over there just constantly throwing out heals for everybody. You got your undead units repeatedly coming back just to harass. And then in the middle of all this, you have the absolute Terminator of a frickin' Terranite just rolling through and stomping people left and right. To the point where eventually, once they have their skills ranked out by the end of it, they're just blasting everybody aside, as you saw. Even a Hydra built for Vitality can't actually take a single hit from that, so there was that. Now, you might say this is, that's a potentially busted build, but you have to consider they had to dedicate a lot to make that actually work. I mean, you could have the Fire Crest on anybody, basically boosting up any potential thing in any class, any unit, whatever else. You could potentially, for example, Snipe Set plus Fire Crest on a long gun user, you could potentially have the same thing, just, crushing at really long range. I don't know. I haven't tried that one yet. There's a lot of potential options that you could do with a Fire Crest. The Ogre set can be combined with almost any weapon, almost any one-handed weapon in the game to potentially cause some crazy results. Like, one thing that I've thought about doing before is a blowgun build on Denim. You'd essentially have the, let's say the Rahula with the Ogre set. Actually, I don't think Lord can use the full Ogre set. Is there anything that can use Ogre set plus blowguns? I'm not sure, but Ogre set with Supple Whip, that could be completely insane. Put that on a warrior with double impact, that probably would be able to one-shot almost anything. But, there's just so many potential options that, it's really hard to just pick one thing. There's a lot of things you can do. And dedicating 2 of those potential game-changing options onto one unit, they better be good with that kind of dedication. Anyway, I gotta go deal with something real quick, so I'll be right back. And back. So what did I miss here? Well, it looks like they've pretty reasonably cleaned up the front line. They got rid of Ozma, they got rid of Azelston. Looks like Vice is actually holding up pretty well this time, so that should give them some pretty solid support from long range. Oh, looks like their own. Looks like Evil Lands is living up to his name over there. So okay, the thing with Ogrely Filthy though, they don't have a whole lot of range on them, so they might have a hard time actually dealing with Vice this time around. He's an absolute glass cannon, but that's assuming that somebody can actually reach him. So this map is also one of those ones that, if facing archers, it's definitely better towards the challenging team here. So they're having a good time there, but yeah, Enforcer's just kind of do as Enforcer does and just shred absolutely everything. They're gonna any kind of debuffs they throw on a nearly dead undead is just it's not really gonna stick. More item support coming in. It's just there's just so much that can potentially happen here. Okay, well, I mean, yeah, they're not going to succeed in stopping the octopus there. Going for the silent light, that's going to stop him from doing any exorcisms as needed. But well, there we go. Vice doing his thing. Although, wasn't he running Stinky Set? How was he able to target him? I could be mistaken, but I thought Owen over here... Dang it. I thought Owen was running the Stinky Set. No. He's the one that's running full Dragon Scale. Okay. That's fine. Whatever. And yeah, another 2 units going down for the snow... Or at least 1 unit going down for the Snowflakes. I'm going to say this is really not looking good for them right now. They've lost a good chunk of their team. They haven't really made any really meaningful gains here either. It looks like they've taken out 1 dragon and a gremlin. That's certainly not the powerhouses of their team by any means. They did finally take out the octopus. It took them a long time to get there, but they did finally pull it off, so that's something. They've got most of their long-range options still available to them, though. And as you can see there, Firecrest does not stop fear. That's the funny thing. The Firecrest has a very specific list that Death Proof actually covers. Stun and fear are not on that list. It's basically stuff like petrify, stop, stun, or not stun, but stop, shackle, bind, that kind of business. But yeah, even while hit by fear, still able to do 450. It's like, yeah. They break the numbers so hard that it just doesn't matter. So they take out Deneb. Yeah, Vice still wasting his big damage on those bigger ones. Denim just kind of doing what he can far away from the rest of the team. Invisible Healer, not really doing a whole lot of healing. He's just kind of chopping away. Not sure what she thought Salamander's going to do here. So they can use Nature's Whisper or whatever it's called, or Nature Power. They very rarely do, though, and I'm not sure why. They do have the ability to use it. Like, I've seen them use it consistently in single player, but just not in this. It's odd how that works. Cashwell, once again, just doing great, but I don't think it's going to really be enough. Especially if this turns them against each other. Yeah, got Lands over here. He just can't help but want to switch sides. It's almost like that's a callback to it's the first OB ending there. There we go. Insta-kill Snipe. That's fine, whatever. I mean, he's scared, but he's still in love with the opposite team. That guy's just beating people with a stick. Fairy goes down. I don't think that's really going to matter too much. Because, yeah, they've still got the Enforcer. They've still got most of their support up. I mean, okay, never mind. Snowflakes are actually starting to gain some ground here. I don't think... Yeah, most of their big damage is on the opposite side, and especially right here with Denim going down. Did they still have the Ghost up? I think the Ghost might actually be gone, so okay. That's gone. You got... oh my goodness. Okay, 1800 on Warren. Yeah, this is kind of when it all starts going down here. So the thing with that Invisible Healer, they're actually probably one of the most role-filling jobs in this entire thing. So sure, they're a damage soak. Sure, they provide passive damage as time goes on. Sure, they provide passive healing as time goes on. But mostly passive healing. But here's the other thing. They're also the kind of plan Z of this entire team. Because if somehow, against all odds, they get to a situation where where everybody else is gone, they've somehow taken down the Enforcer. Realistically, that team is in really bad shape. There's maybe, a couple units left, but that's why I was saying that they were screwed last time, because if everything else is gone, there's usually probably nothing but tatters left of this, of the opposite team. And he has until everybody bleeds out in order for the Stinky set to stop working. If you didn't know, Stinky set basically does not render you completely invincible or entirely invisible. Once everybody else is down and has already counted out, you will run into a situation where it's just sucky armor. It's just terrible gear, but that entire time they get a chance to potentially clean everything up. Alright, so Gremlin goes down, but they still have... they still theoretically have everything that they need to make this work. Will they clean it up like last time? Will this just be the Enforcer-only run? Where just one Terror Knight crushes everything? Because it's kind of looking that way. I mean, unfortunately, I might actually have to make this a two-parter because I'm running really short on time, but we'll see. Yeah, it's definitely looking that way right now. Yep, he's just beating everybody with a stick. I'm really surprised that Vice is holding up as well as he is. Alright, and looks like, yeah. It's gonna be Lansgone, gonna be Cashwood, instantly reviving from that. Okay. Will they take them out here? Because they've still got a lot of items in their face, apparently. I believe Snowflakes were one of the ones that actually had quite a few items available to them. Ooh. Okay, yeah, he's got no chance. I was going to say, if it was a triple miss, but it's a triple hit. Oh, no. Yeah, that's going to be it. That's going to be it. There's nothing they can do now. Oh, I love that so much. It's so cheesy. It's so cheesy, but the AI can do it. Oh. Wow. Yeah, when have you ever seen them do so little damage that it actually ticks down to completely zero? Okay, that'll be that then. Alright, we can go ahead and safely call it with Cashwood getting completely blown to pieces over here. Yikes. Alrighty, hello every folks, and welcome to part 2 of this disaster of a tournament. Well, kind of, sort of. This will all be just kind of one long part, for many reasons. But yes, it's definitely been a bit of a long tournament, so I'd like to hopefully wrap it up as quickly as possible. So next up we have Lotus Knights versus Corpse NATO here, one of the matchups that seemed like it seems like it's probably pretty much destined to go here to the Lotus Knights. They were essentially built as a hard counter to this team after the... Well, I would say this version of it was built as a hard counter to this team as time went on. Now, one little side note here. In the background, in between episodes here, I went ahead and I built 2 more teams, just kind of out of curiosity. I'm not including them in the tournament or anything, because they were just kind of like meme ideas. I just wanted to see what would happen. But I figured I'd at least share the results while watching this whole disaster unfold. And first of all, I saw a comment a little bit ago that was mentioning that you specifically had to have particular items in the end game. There was no way to do anything without them. And I just noticed I'm over here trying to press the fast forward button on a controller that's not even plugged in. Way to go, genius. Anyway, so yeah, they were specifically saying that you had to go get particular items, and there was just no way that you're getting anywhere in this game without them. It's the only way that the old I have to grind because it's an RPG and I've got, there's no other strategy I can think of approach. So anyway, went ahead and tested that a little bit by making a multiplayer team that was strictly limited to stuff that you can build in the store at the end of the game. And, you know what, they actually didn't do too terribly bad. They were extremely outclassed, but part of the, the interesting balance of the Tactics Ogre PSP is just that there's kind of different layers to where the game is. Like, it's interesting because almost the different chapters of the game almost feel like their own chapters in a way. Like, early on you got all your basic trash, whatever, everyone's just kind of learning the mechanics, and then partway through the game you start getting all your Baldur stuff, And it's like, oh, I see there's some secondary effects showing up off this equipment. It's making people better at casting. That's interesting. And then hopefully around that, I kind of like to think that around that point they were thinking, okay, maybe if we put intelligence on everything, people will realize that, hey, that's not the one that boosts debuffs. I know personally, first few times through the game, I completely misunderstood that as, like, you can't boost debuffs. They're just their own thing, and you can't do anything about it. Yeah, no idea how I managed to forget that mind exists whatsoever. I don't know why that never clicked. But then again, I am very, very obviously a dumbass when it comes to a lot of things. Anyway, so when it comes to yeah, a lot of those balancing things, around that point, like around that mid-game is when you start seeing all kinds of crazy debuffs showing up on different equipment. Like probably Terror Knight with a +1 Claymore, or +1, I think it's like the Viking Sword or something. There's another one that has a breach effect on there. Is pretty noticeably amazing. So that ends up sticking out way above the others there. So, it's just kind of cool to see them letting you test out some of these debuffs that you may not have tried because it was mostly relegated to mages and stuff like that. I will say they probably could have handled that a little bit better, but you do get a decent amount of time with all those pieces of equipment, especially with some of those two-handers and things like that, because they really don't get very many upgrades as time goes on compared to the other stuff. But that all said, yeah, once you get to Damask, it's interesting because it's some of the sturdiest equipment in the game, which is fitting given, it's Damascus. But it's interesting because, you'd think it'd be thoroughly destroyed by endgame stuff, and to some degree, sure, it is. But just the fact that they have so much vitality, it actually gives them a decent amount of time to catch up. In fact, it's just the rule set that was used for this tournament that kind of holds them back. So I think the next time that I try something like this, maybe I will go back to what we did last time, wherein we just have them, run a quick little race between the teams, and then we go ahead and just use whatever teams they built up. I want to use I want to have set skills on everybody, but again, the problem just kind of comes from the fact that there's certain skills that were clearly not meant to be leveled up. You're meant to have leveled up weapon skills and pretty much just weapon skills and occasionally racial skills. It's like they kind of expected everybody towards the very, very end of Coda, when they start getting into multiplayer, that they would wind up like, let's say, rank 5 or 6 anatomy, a maxed out weapon skill, maybe an maxed out elemental augment, maybe like a second racial skill at like 1 or 2, and then maybe parry, deflect, or overpower at like rank 2 or 3. Because yeah, you get some pretty decent bonuses to those skills off of gear, but you don't see. I don't think anybody can honestly go back to their first Coda completion and tell me that they actually maxed all that crap out. I mean, I've got save files that literally I left them running on AI, on Farampa, just going and power grinding through everything to try and min-max the crap out of a save file, and they still weren't at that level. Like, I mean, they still wound up like rank 3 or 4 parry or overpower, deflect, or any of that business. So, I'm sure there's exceptions, but it's kind of an unreasonable amount of grinding. Actually, I was talking to Mr. Vale the other day, and it actually came up for triangle strategy there as well, where it's pretty much the same thing as the equipment upgrades in that game. Which, by the way, there we go. Reflect magic actually shown, or reflect damage showing what it's actually good for over there. That's kind of an interesting scenario. But like, for example, in that one, you can technically go and get different upgrade materials at any time, but you can't get any of the better ones, and you're kind of just maxing out on low-level garbage. Though technically, there's nothing stopping you from grinding that stuff out. You're better off just going and doing other things. But it's kind of a similar scenario where, it's not necessarily going to be worth it. It stops being worth it very, very quickly. Like, for the sake of comparison, the first time you go through, you get a piece of iron for one of the scenarios there. And it's like, okay, great, I can go give one character an upgrade. Fantastic. And then you go back and it's like, oh, that'll be like $1,000, and also you're going to need 6 of them, so I hope you like running through this battle 6 times for that. And it's like, no, I'm just going to wait for them to be available at the store and just go buy that crap. And so, it's interesting to see the kind of a similar mentality there, but anywho, taking a quick step back here, so that Damascus team, if they had all their stuff maxed out, I'm pretty sure, yeah, they would actually have a reasonable chance of winning some things. They didn't have as many skills available to them off of use items or anything, but they were actually functional. Their gear was able to get past some of the end-game armors. They were actually reasonably competent. They were able to last, I would say, like 45 minutes or something like that, versus, I think it was Lotus Knights that I actually tested them against, so... Still, they lasted a really long time. They're really sturdy in that store-bought equipment, because that's kind of the trade-off. For anyone that had missed the Detail series, one of the cool things they do is, like, past the end of the game, like, Damask is really the last and best stuff that people can actually make, so the rest of it is, like, all this crazy stuff that came from different locations, or under special circumstances, or whatever else. Like, part of the reason that you only end up finding dragon gear and, like, desert blades and things like that around Chapter 4, at least intentionally. Yes, you can force the game to spawn that stuff early, but by intent, it feels like they basically just made it so that you can acquire that stuff in Chapter 4. That would be around the point when you have access to all the ports and, you know, stuff starts flowing into the island and stuff like that. You start seeing more equipment around, so presumably it either was gone and picked up from the Lotus side, or maybe was imported from somewhere else, but notice that quite a few of them mentioned that they were essentially imported. So, anyway, that's just kind of interesting there. Just seeing how the teams are going here real quick. So we've got Lotus Knights, we've got 5 of them left. A lot of their team is not coming back. We've got 3 left here on the Corpse NATO side. I mean, they technically can still make it back. We'll just see how this goes. It's just looking incredibly unlikely. Uh-oh. What do you mean encoding overloaded? What does that mean? Okay, apparently video quality is going to suck. Awesome! Awesome. This is exactly what I wanted. Good times, good times. Yeah, video quality for this is going to suck. And by the way, when I start doing a few more things, showing off the Funny Shapes game and things like that, a lot of that is going to be clips recorded directly off of the Switch. So, yeah, don't expect the most amazing visual fidelity. I, quite frankly, do not have the time or means to set anything up that's particularly flashy right now. Most of this stuff is for educational purposes only. So, let me get back to those 2 teams I was talking about. So yeah, Damascus team, very good on defense, not so good on offense, but they can hold their own, and that defense does occasionally manage to keep them afloat for quite a while. So, again, when we change the rules a little bit for the next one, we'll see how they do. When it comes to the other one, though, there was a conversation on the Strategy RPG Discord that two-handed swords in particular of both varieties are unforgivably garbage. Like that, they've basically got no redeeming features to them, and for the most part, that is sadly very true. In fact, it seems like their whole purpose is intentionally as just a light weapon option for particular classes under very specific circumstances, which I guess historically that kind of makes sense, because, yeah, what are you doing with a two-handed sword when you can have a spear? So, for example, most of their use abilities are pretty iffy. I try to make use of those as much as I can, but really a very rare friggin' endgame sword that does Purify? Really? Like, I can use this thing to hit like 300, but let me cure 25. You know, it's interesting. They're actually having a hard time closing this out right now. There's actually a very real chance that Corpse NATO is going to win this, because they keep popping back up, and I believe they either might be unwilling or out of exorcisms. Especially because they keep coming back with death whales, and this is what they're best at. Very similar to, to Ogrely Filthy. They're kind of built with a sort of plan D in mind, that once everything else falls apart, they just sort of keep coming back, and they just keep delaying that end game over and over and over. And yeah, there we go. It actually looks like they've gone ahead and won this. They've got Kamui going down now. The last one left is Floros over there, who is stopped. There's the obligatory Mendleaf. You can't have one fight without somebody idiotically using a Mendleaf. Anyway, so back on that two-hander team. I have to say, just using Swordmasters exclusively for their dances and the Makwahatl, definitely the way to go. As we saw in that fight there, it actually did end up carrying them quite a bit. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next one here. So that is the Lotus Knights losing their first one. Now we've got, looks like a final fight between Corpse NATO and Dreadnought, which, that doesn't seem like it's particularly likely to go for Corpse NATO, but alright, whatever. So, for the winner's round, let's make that happen. Alright, last fight of the winner's circle here. So this is Dreadnought versus Corpse NATO. Dreadnought essentially built as the sort of Gary of teams here, meant to try and counter everything. Corpse NATO meant to hopefully overwhelm with superior firepower and speed. So we'll see which one ends up winning it this time around. I have to say, I have tested these two in particular. It's actually gone both ways before, so we'll see how this goes. I'm going to say more often than not, my money is going to be on Dreadnought here. They do have a lot more options available to them. But, you know, again, we'll see. We'll see as we'll see. As far as Exorcism goes, not a whole lot of that for the speedy guys over here on the left, but, you know, all things considered, the idea was that they can essentially have one unit that has an Exorcism, while the rest simply try to overwhelm the enemy team there. Now, I was talking about that two-hander team recently, so basically, what it kind of comes down to for making a functional two-hander only team, and I say functional, they weren't very good. Like, when I tested it, they lost to most of the top teams and everything else, but they were able to at least beat some of the lower teams, so they'd be a solid C tier kind of situation. But yeah, if it was set up with 6 Swordmasters with Makwahatls and a bunch of dances, and the idea was that they had very high defense in order to try to get rid of aggro. They didn't focus on offense whatsoever. But they essentially come in with an initial charge, just petrifying everybody. Obviously coming in with Spell Strike. And the idea is that they function as sort of suppression role. So they suppress everybody early on. Meanwhile, there's Warriors, Dragoons, and Terror Knights that are coming in behind them with the two-handers from their respective classes. Essentially, the one with Purify there just ends up spamming Purify as they get closer. It's a bit worthless there. Ogre Blade guy tends to do a pretty solid job damage-wise. Pretty much everybody else was just built trying to specialize in one particular stat. So, for example, one of them was seeing the highest potential HP that you could get on a single unit, which incidentally was 797. That was with a Fire Crest, a Bronze Helmet, I believe it was the Moonblade, and what was it? I'm not sure what else. Oh yeah, Firecrest, obviously. It was only 4 things because they don't get a 5th slot because they're using two-handers. Even with a unit built for Augment Dark with Spellcraft, the Sweep Blade, it's not too great. It's actually really disappointing because it's got the one of the highest attack values in the game, but it sucks. It just completely sucks. I don't know. So yeah, in many ways, that two-hander team was just kind of elaborating on what worked with Corpse NATO over here. But unfortunately, yeah, they more or less require being able to land those debuffs, which they are pretty good at. They're very solid at suppression. I haven't tested them against this team over here, so you know, maybe we'll test them in the future. But again, my goal with this first tournament here was to at least see a couple player teams here, see if anybody can come up with something that can kill Dreadnought, because again, I'm pretty certain they've got this in the bag. They've got the exorcisms, they've got the quick revives, they've got the defense, they've got a pretty solid offense, as well as enough mixed low aggro. I don't know if that's the best way to put it, but it's like a mixed style low aggro is kind of what I'm mentally classing some of those crossbow tanks as, where they're basically not threatening to the AI. They see, they see a light weapon, they're not really targeting it. They see high armor, they're not targeting it. I have noticed that the AI does seem to prefer attacking the higher damage value weapons every now and then. I'm not sure exactly where or how it calculates all that, but it does seem to consider it at any rate. And yeah, they just more or less clean up while everybody else is buying time. So that sort of system works. I've tried expanding it to more units, like just having 3 crossbow tanks and maybe having less distraction, but not so great. I've considered putting taking Dreadnought here and adding some of those Makwahatl Swordmasters. Like, by their own, I would say they're one of the stronger builds in this tournament, but oh, okay, I shouldn't say on their own. Actually, as a support, they're one of the strongest supports that's been in this tournament, but unfortunately, they don't ever end up doing much damage on their own. Like, eventually, they end up switching over to doing, petrifying finishers and things like that. as well as doing AoE Charm and AoE Stun and AoE Breach, and that works really well combined with the other two-handers, so that works for that team. Like, theoretically, one way that could be done is, let's say, 4 Maquahuatl Swordmasters in the front, something like 4... actually, probably 2 heavy crossbow tanks, or 2 light crossbow tanks, 2 heavy crossbow rogues off on the sides, 2 necromancers, and 2 long-range archers. Actually, no, probably Jigla and long gun. And basically that, theoretically, they would run in, they would essentially drop a bunch of suppression in the form of those petrifications. They would have a solid amount of damage from their light crossbows, stragglers getting picked off from the 2 sniper units in the back. But part of the reason that this one works so well is because the Damask +1 also comes with a stun effect, meaning that while it's building up early on, it can still potentially throw some stuns out there. The reason the Terror Knights are utilized is because when they're getting close, that paralytic wave suppression is pretty solid. It's one of the reasons that Terror Knights are so dang good in multiplayer. And, I mean... like, this whole team just ends up doing a solid job for all of those purposes. The reason I didn't go for 2 Terror Knights for those front tanks there was just because the, well, it kind of felt like the Warrior was doing a better job of using the light crossbow there. I felt like he was a little bit faster. And they didn't need as much suppression on this team because they have enough distractions up in the front. So, who knows? I mean, overall, it's a little bit funny that for all of these teams running the Jigla set, not everybody actually has that dang thing, and it's definitely not the end-all, be-all of, of the entire game here. Here, let's go ahead and take a look at how we're doing so far. Yeah, we have pretty much a complete clean sweep over here. I think we're going to end up with a perfect run for Dreadnought. But that's okay, because I suppose we might as well just have the loser circle fight it out, and then we'll see how that goes. Yeah, more banishing, more everything else. I think it's pretty safe to call this one as they try to down another zombie, but it's just not going well. Yeah, I think it's safe to call this one and just move on to the next one now. We got the battle of the meme teams here. 2 different challenge runs. We've got Spork Fury with their whole gimmick of using one of every class, and then we've got Lance Little with their gimmick of using only Rune Fencers. And we'll see how this mess ends up playing out. Probably not going to end up playing out particularly well. Okay, so between these two, I would say Spork Fury's got the better chance by far, but you never know. It kind of comes down to crits, I think, because there's definitely a lot more effects coming out, and usually the team with the most effects and the ability to keep them in play tends to be the winner in multiplayer. A single hit from a powerful weapon is usually going to get instantly healed by an item. But when it comes to being able to keep pressure on, that's something that's going to eventually be the deciding factor there. Now, for rules going forward, I've thought about it a little bit, kind of going between fights here. And I'm thinking, yeah, we'll definitely go back to the old, from the Ogre battle tournament. We'll go ahead and probably do that same thing of just having them do quick skill rank up while going through a map of some sort. So the AI had a little bit of trouble going through San Bronze, so I'm going to test them out on different locations, just kind of see how they do. Because I feel like San Bronze was... it was a little chaotic. It was kind of nice to have those different paths for them to go on, but we'll see. We'll see what ends up working a little bit better. It definitely was a nice little spectacle map. It's just that the AI definitely got trapped, especially for the melee characters in a lot of cases. So I'd like to hear some suggestions if anybody's got them. Because, like, the obvious one would be Farampa. Unfortunately, there's a Hawkman in the very first map that can just be a massive troll as far as that goes. So that could be a problem there. Not to mention all these teams will functionally have to be rebuilt for that. Oh well. Let's see. Going through the different temples... see, like, the Wind Temple, I would say, probably has some of the better layouts, but, again, early Griffins potentially can just hide up in the walls and cause a massive delay. We have, I would say the Earth Temple probably has the flattest layout, but, again, there's some zombie rogues off in the corners that can potentially just troll you. So, I'm trying to think if there's any temples for sure that don't have any, troll units in the first few maps. Because, ideally, what I'd like to see is, like, I would say up to 3 maps that everybody can go through. Just a quick little gauntlet. Or potentially just one really big map. Actually, one idea that's come to mind is there's one really big map, either in Sand Bronze or Floating Ruins, I forget exactly which. But it's the one where there's essentially a gigantic 3-way fight with a gigantic pit in the middle. So that one's pretty interesting to see. But again, low movement units might get penalized there. There's also that one towards the end. I mean, I suppose one thing we could do is just the final fight of San Bronze. If we're doing that one, I mean, it's just one gigantic flat area. There's a lot of maneuvering that they can do, not a lot of maneuvering that they have to. Yeah, you know what? Maybe that'll work. I'll have to test that out later when I have time. This is probably going to be the last window for recording in quite some time, so there's that. There's actually one more video that I wanted to make before getting to the triangle review, because I don't expect to have time for anything else. All right, yeah. So I'm going to say that the odds are very fantastic here in terms of Spork Fury winning this. I again don't expect them to make a comeback, but I mean, look at this. They're actually doing pretty decently. Let's take a look at that score real quick. See what we're working with. I mean, everybody's still up at the moment. So we've got Lance Little here. Actually, their health is up pretty decently high. You know what? I stand corrected. Maybe they're doing okay. We'll see. It just kind of comes down to whether they can do damage. Lance Little's big problem is focusing on recovery and not doing a whole lot of damage, because I believe they're all set on Vanguard, because that's more or less how I was playing that run. It was a very, very, very defensive run, unfortunately. But, what can you do? Yeah, not a whole lot to say about him. It's literally just a bunch of people, Divine Magic and Pointy Sticks, because at the time I didn't even want to try out any different variations. Again, part of the reason that I'm occasionally a little bit frustrated hearing advice about the game, that because there were so many weird things that I believe came out of primarily like the GameFAQs forums or stuff like that, but just so many like universal rules that are not even remotely universal. Like the whole you always have to take strengthen thing, and it's like one of the like some of the more decent teams in this multiplayer thing here don't even run strengthen. It's like it's not like, if you didn't know, I assume anybody that's gotten this far knows. Strengthen, it boosts max damage. It doesn't boost actual penetration. If something isn't getting bonuses, like for example, thrown weapon users don't actually benefit that much from using strengthen. Or, for example, if somebody's just running a basic weapon that doesn't have a whole lot of bonuses on it, they're potentially not going to be getting a whole lot of benefit off of that. But, for example, an archer, if they get all their augments up, because just, like, for the sake of reference of, like, why I say archers are actually a lot better balanced than they get credit for, even though the devs themselves mentioned that they made archers powerful on purpose. But, like, let's say, I was comparing 2 archers a while ago, off of my original save file of the game. Or actually, no, it wasn't off my original save file. It was off of a different run I was doing. But there was Canopus, who had been training bows the entire game. He had rank 8, and he had a basic ice bow. And yeah, he hadn't gotten his augments yet. I hadn't picked that up on him. But he was still doing, like, 50s, 60s, whatever, with his shots. He wasn't doing a crazy amount of damage in the end game. This is, like, just getting into Coda. Meanwhile, he had, when I got augments on him, and he had the +1 augment off the bow, so that automatically boosted his attack by 8, he ended up getting about 20 extra damage on each of those attacks. And that just kind of went up exponentially with each rank that he ended up getting. Then combine that with racial stuff, because, again, bonuses. So they're just getting additional bonuses every time that they're pulling that off. And so compare that with another guy that I was training up next to him. Had rank 5. I believe he had rank 3 in the augments or something like that, and no racial skills. He was still doing 1s in the end game. Like, their actual attack value sucks. They just end up tipping really well. I feel like that should be the term. Like, they tip over into getting bonuses very well, but before that, they're kind of iffy. Whereas, for example, something like hammers are consistent throughout the entire game. Like, even kind of mid-game hammers will carry you through quite a ways. I think I ended up using the just basic spiked mace for quite a while in the one of the solo runs I was doing. Speaking of which, maybe... So, there was the soloist run I was doing a while ago, and I have 3 different runs now that I plan to literally just do this screenshot nonsense for. Maybe I should do it for that, too. Let's be honest, most of the time when folks show up to this channel, it's mostly for the audio, not actually so much for the video. Because, yes, the video quality is not amazing, considering most of everything on this channel comes off of a PSP. So, there's that. Well, PSP or Vita, I suppose. It's actually funny, the last Vita that I had, its port was actually damaged in such an oddly specific way that the video quality sucked. I didn't even know that could happen, actually. But, you know, sometimes crazy things like that happen. Alright, so, yeah, Lancelot's looking a little forked here, I don't know. It's the battle of the Pokies over here, but I'm not really seeing much going for them. I think there's Dreadnought for a Spork Fury. What do they have? Okay, I think... Oh, no, that was a Dreadnought from Lancelot. Okay, they're definitely not coming back from this, because that team does not have any comeback potential. So we're just going to go ahead and move on to the next one. They're out of this one. So Lancelot is the first team eliminated from the tournament. Alright, next up, just because it seems fitting, we've got Pyroclasma versus the Byzantines. Just because we've got Pyroclasma with their fire theme, we've got Byzantines here with their ice theme. I don't recall if Pyroclasma actually has any permanent ways to get rid of zombies, so this might be over before it even started, but, you know, we'll see. There's a map with poison on it. They do have a lot of damage potential, so they just might be able to pull this off. If you'll remember last time, it was a very heartbreaking loss for Pyroclasma, who almost took the snowflakes out early. With essentially the Enforcer coming in and wiping out 5 of their Hydras, all by herself. So, there we go, that's not embarrassing at all. I don't know what you're talking about. And, yeah, they're just going ahead and charging ahead. Medusa shield to the back of the head, as you do, because, of course, why would you use your vision-based projectile spell thing in any place other than directly into somebody's back, naturally. So yeah, the main problem with Pyroclasma here, I believe their caster might actually have a purification... Nope. Really, he should have a purification staff on him. So, actually, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if warlocks can actually use one. So, the kind of weird downside to everything is that you do kind of want some casters... Yeah, there we go. So that's what it was. Warlocks can't use purification staff. They are better in a lot of other respects, but when it comes to your dedicated spellcasters and enchantresses and things like that are just going to be usually a bit better if you want to have a multi-role. But you do get some of the more specialized debuffs like Brimstone and stuff like that coming off of Warlocks. Which actually, on that note, interesting thought experiment. Less a thought experiment, more just a weird observation. But it occurred to me. Enchantresses are not the witches in this game. The witches are not the witches in this game. The Terror Knights are the witches in this game. I don't know how I never put that together, but the whole role of the witch in all the previous games was like charge forward and use a paralytic wave and hope for the best. And that's the Terror Knight. It's a little bit funky that that's a thing, but you know what? I don't know. I like Terror Knights even more as a result of that. They're such a weird unit, you know? Like, how many times do you have a heavy special, like a heavy armor friggin' debuff specialist of all things? But yeah, it actually kind of makes sense as far as why their speed was balanced how it was, because fear and all that, it's a good debuff, but it wouldn't be a good reason to make them one of the slowest classes in the game. But being able to spam Paralytic Wave and just how busted that could be in the rest of the series if you had it on a fast witch. I was actually mentioning that in the Ogre Battle tier list, that if you have essentially a unit that was trained to be relatively fast and then you switch them over to be a witch, yeah, they're if you manage to get them initiative, they're going to ruin some stuff for you. So that was a good time. Yeah, is there really... I'm trying to think how Pyroclasma would actually make it through this. Like, their only real hope if she stops spamming Envenom, is to be able to get rid of some of those griffins early. I believe the Purification Staff has 3 exorcisms, so they should, in theory, be able to keep 9 of them pinned down, especially since a lot of the problem with the Byzantines is that they're slow, aside from the griffins. The griffins are the only ones that are fast and come back relatively quick. The hoplites and the heavy casters and things like that, they're not the fastest units. They were expected to be bulky. I wanted to give them as much armor and survivability while also making them zombies, so, you know, it didn't work as well as expected, especially the early version where it was just all heavy tanks. That's why the 4 griffins were introduced, and then that turned out to be a fantastic decision. But yeah, I do like that we haven't had to actually ban anything this time around. It's interesting how much of it just ends up balancing itself. Like, for example, Ogre set and Jiggler set, they seem like they'd be completely busted. Aside from the light crossbow combo, and I'd argue that has its drawbacks as well, it's definitely, it holds up a lot better than I would have thought. Like, I thought Stinky set would be the end-all, be-all, ultimate cheapness. It mostly just comes down to a, like, final round annoyance, but it basically allows you to completely turn off aggro on a single unit, which actually has a lot of interesting applications. Again, we've seen the invisible healers, we've seen invisible item supports, we've seen invisible harassment units, but it's just interesting the kinds of stuff that you can do with that combo. So, and by the way, if you didn't know about that, what I'm talking about, the end of the match thing, basically at the end of the match, they can become visible again, but everybody else has to bleed out. Realistically, if they're in that position, they've already lost. The actual invisible unit, in most cases, will not be enough on its own to change anything. But, either way. What are they going to do here? Just lots of casting, apparently. It's good to see Summons actually getting a little bit of play. It's interesting that he ended up hitting himself instead of just targeting an empty area, but sure. Whatever works for you, buddy. Going for that Poison Breath there. Gonna end up... okay, that didn't really... Actually, that Guardian Force didn't actually do anything. They tried to save a unit that was basically at 10 health. Wonderful. Actually, on that note, a bit of a related story. I'm actually liking one of the units in Funny Shapes game more than I would have expected. That they have a guy that basically does the Guardian Force thing, except it's more just an AoE 2-tile aggro. I mean, it was the same guy that was from the demos and whatever else, but it's just... I don't know, it's nice. It feels nice. It's like, I have to say a lot of the unit synergies in that game just feel really, really solid so far. It's definitely been a happy surprise. I mentioned that in the review too, but it just, I don't know, it just makes me happy thinking that they actually did it good. But, you know, full review of that coming at some point. Haven't exactly finished the thing, but man, it just makes me happy. Alright. So, yeah, it looks like those griffins are really starting to tear in now. We've got 2 permanent downs for Pyroclasma. Those units are expected to go down, but I don't really see anything that the Hydras could do to keep this whole area pinned. Even with 2 exorcisms coming out of their Enchantress, she is still down. There's not really much else they would be able to do here. Actually, did they even... Let's see. No, they only actually got 1 exorcism off, so they still had 2 uses of the staff that they never used. It's not looking good for them, is the thing. They might have some survivability here, but they would have to essentially do the Knight of Lotus thing of just knocking them all down at the same time. Have to say, definitely preferred the undead mechanic in that game, because you only saw them come in once. And that was it. Which, unfortunately, I would assume the multiplayer would be completely skewed when it came to undead units, now that I think about it. I don't know. I never tried multiplayer on that. I still need to cover that at some point. You know, someday, somehow. One of these days. Alright, do they have a chance? Looking unlikely, because they're doing about 100, because their strengthen is not really something they get. Interesting. More spam emails about NFTs. Great. Fantastic. Let's just forget those exist, please. I have to say, one of the dumbest things to come out of the last 2 years is those, and there's still people trying to somehow figure out how to make it work. And I'm not sure there's any practical application to them whatsoever, but who knows? Who knows? It seems like one of the weirdest and most expensive, like, self-destructive memes that have been around in a while. But alright. Yeah, these guys are coming back. The Griffins are coming back without too many issues. They've got some of them petrified. If they get lucky and just kind of knock everybody out in the right order, maybe. But this kind of just feels like we're dragging out the inevitable. Yeah, okay, they just took down a knight. You may have noticed with those exorcisms, when it comes to the exorcism staff in particular, it's kind of interesting because for the staff and for the exorcism spell, or exorcism 1 that is, they will seemingly always wait until they tick down to 1 unless they've got absolutely nothing better to do. Once they tick down to 1, they kind of seem to have it as a higher priority target. Exorcism 2, however, they will gladly spam at the first opportunity, which is why the Erasean is basically the eraser. Anywho, though, yeah, for the Byzantines here, actually, the Erasean would have been really good for them to have on their one of their frontliners. The full ice meme, not really too great. I'm going to say, though, if they don't pick off something amazing here, I'm going to say there's really no chance for Pyroclasma to do it now. Because they lost the one unit that they needed to make this happen because they didn't suppress the Griffins. And, yeah, I'm going to say they don't really have the offense at this point to even make this happen. Because, yeah, the full poisoning breath and whatever else just gets completely resisted by evade. They've got 2 units that are going to be spamming that. They've got Griffins that'll keep coming back. This is really just a matter of time. Alright, let's move on to the next one and just go ahead and call this one. Alrighty, so next we have Red Menace versus Twisted Meta. So we have the expected longbow meta, along with ninjas, versus the kind of expected undead zombie gunner meta. Yeah, I'm going to say this is probably going to be a complete curb stomp here. The gunners have the range, they have the power, and they certainly have the map for this. Granted, they both got range, but the reason that the Red Menace team uses the frickin' mud map, aside from being fitting, again, unfortunately topical team there, aside from being very fitting for that, like, it's just a massive advantage for them in almost all circumstances. The longbows are the one thing that can counter them on that, but again, guns are going to out DPS longbows, and even for the few gains they can get, they have no means of exorcism here, so this is probably going to be a pretty quick one. But, you know, stranger things have happened, I suppose, but yeah, they've already lost, or they've already got 2 units getting petrified. Looks like they're going to be coming out of that one reasonably well. They're going to start working up on some of their skills. Yeah, they do absolutely piss poor damage without their skills. This is actually another reason that I really like using the quick skill rank up method here, because it allows you to see just how much of a difference those skill rank ups get. Especially like with those thrown weapons there, you'll see by the end of it, they're maybe going to max out at about 120, like even with strengthen and all that kind of thing. It doesn't really benefit them that much, whereas the longbows are going to be doing like 200s per shot, if not 300s, that kind of thing, depending on what they're fighting. All right, and lots of petrifications landing because the actual magic evasion for archers is pretty darn low. Basically, it runs 2 different checks. It does the physical damage check, and then it does a magic evasion check, I believe it was, for the for evading the petrification, which they've got basically none of. So, you know, just go ahead and repeat the same thing in complete circles. Sounds smarter that way. It sounds more smarted of the brain think. But there we go. Twisted Meta repeatedly getting pushed back despite not even having encountered the main part of the team there. Yikes. Well, I mean, they managed to take down a cockatrice. It's something. But yeah, the cockatrices are ruining them before they're even approaching the gunners, so that's the thing. Archers will do really good in in single player when the AI does not have armor. Supposedly there's a cheat that was circulating around that supposedly, if applied properly, will cause the AI to use all available equipment. I haven't been able to get that to work. I was hoping that somebody might be able to enlighten me as to why it's not working. But once it does, I do look forward to giving that more of a try as well. Yeah, I'm going to say they probably don't have much of a chance here, is the thing. This is definitely ironic given the last week, because, the quote-unquote unfortunate topicalness is due to, their unfortunate namesake deciding to not be the greatest people this last month. not getting into political stuff. Actually, funnily enough, I had a random argument with somebody about that the other. Well, I don't know when this is. It's going to end up being the other day by the time this actually gets edited and comes out, because this is going to be a bit of a long story for actually slapping all this crap together. But yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing to see like what folks are hearing on the complete opposite side of things. I was trying to make a joke in some comment section somewhere, and somebody from the other side got very, very upset. Anyway, it is what it is, I suppose, but what it is extremely unfortunate. Alright, so the archers are starting to get close at least. Do they have any chance here whatsoever? No. Like, you'd think that they were actually having a shot here, but realistically we're just getting to them, getting into the meat grinder. Man, this is a complete and total curb stomp. Well, there you go. There you go. You know, best class in the game. Getting curb stomped by something that's generally viewed as a bit of a B tier. Or a D tier in some cases. I've seen somebody say that Fusiliers were the worst unit in the game. I'm not sure where they're getting that exactly. Actually, one other idea for a tournament, and I don't know if anybody's actually watched this dang thing this far, but if they have, one other idea for a tournament would just be the stuff that people like just limiting it entirely to stuff that people might have run into by, like, level 25. Like, the best bow would be the Crescent Bow, for example. You know, you'd see a lot of ice shields or ice swords and things like that running around, lots of worm scale, but, like, no high-end elemental gear, some elemental vests. Like, just go through drop lists and just, like randomly pick stuff from all over the place of just, like, here's all the stuff that was found, make a team that works off this. It's like a randomizer tournament of sorts. There's so much potential fun stuff to do with this. It's just a shame that it's so dang complicated to put a team together, you know? Because, I mean, I can keep... Like, if people would just at least submit ideas, I would gladly put teams together based off those ideas. It's just that so far, most of the time, whenever I put out one of these, it's like, hey, there's a new Tactics Ogre thing that happened. Well, that's nice. Okay, bye. And then, like, not a single suggestion ever comes in. Most of the suggestions end up coming from people watching way older videos. Like, for example, that's how that Damask team ended up coming about, or that two-hander team of just, like, somebody complaining about some weird thing. And then it's like, oh, I can make a team out of that. Oh, hey, look at that. They managed to actually down one of the gunners. I mean, he'll be back in 2 seconds, but it's fine. Yeah, so, let's see, what's the next team looking like? Since that guy's petrified and he's about to get completely just trounced. Zealots versus regulars, apparently. Alright, let's move on to that one then. Alrighty, so Zealots versus regulars. Just a reminder, Zealots are the complete anti-undead team, just all holy weaponry for the most part. The regulars are just from my first save file, just whatever the hell happened to be on the team, and then I updated their equipment for this tournament and skills and all that kind of thing. So, you know, all their tier 1s and tier 2s are upgraded to tier 4s and that kind of business. So, that's neat, I suppose. I'm going to say I'm kind of leaning towards regulars on this one. Only because a lot of the stuff that Zealots rely on here is pretty much anti-undead stuff. That is their entire meme purpose. But I suppose they would have the far better equipment, so we'll see how that ends up playing out. I forget how much I actually updated this this team over here, because their score is in the 7,000s. Let's see, those guys have all their holy stuff. These guys... Oh, yeah, no, I forgot. This is... Okay, they're literally just running endgame gear. Alright. That's fine. Like, not even endgame. This is, like, just end of Chapter 4 gear. This is, like, barely into Coda. Again, the best piece of gear that this team has, that might as well just be their logo, is the friggin' Cloud Slippers. So, that's a thing. But for reference, that Archer and both Denim and the Archer there are maxed out for their respective things, and they're not doing a whole lot damage-wise. Yeah, Zealots are almost certainly going to get this one then, unless something miraculous happens. I forgot just how bad the regulars team was, but it was here as a measuring stick, so that'll certainly happen. So we're pretty much going to be losing one team with every passing round here. I believe after this, guess we'll have to do like Byzantines versus Lotus Knights or something like that. Just kind of keep going down the list. We're having one go down with every iteration. There's still Ogre, Filthy, and 100% Hustle for Sports. That has to fight for the second place spot. I actually completely forgot about that one, but alright. We'll see if I end up actually updating where everybody is on the brackets. I probably won't. I did make emblems for all of the teams. We'll see if I end up actually having the time to edit those in. Because just taking out the pauses alone is probably going to take a pretty reasonably long time. And this is assuming that this actually comes out and the audio isn't completely scuffed several hours into this whole project. Because yeah, we'll see how it ends up panning out, but I don't know if people realize just how many different sessions had to happen for this particular one. Anyway, there's Princess's Whim triggering. That's definitely one of those weird skills right there. So if you didn't know, Princess's Whim is basically one of the kind of your rank up percentage chance type action moves that you can get. Except it starts off at like 20% chance to remove a random debuff, and so most of the time until you get it all the way ranked up, it's just missing all of the time. So it's constantly just Cashua just bragging to herself and accomplishing nothing. It's probably one of my favorite jokes as far as endgame classes go. Because even in this kind of rule set, it's barely worth the RT to use. It's just kind of funny. But, oh well. Alright, is there anything the regulars would be able to do here? I'm gonna assume no. I mean, they've got some damage output, but like, compared to these guys, it's gonna be pretty insignificant. I mean, their armor isn't amazing, their gear isn't amazing, they've got more options, but most of those options involve chowing down healing items right now. I mean, they've got okay defense. I just really see no way that they're surviving this. Yeah, like even endgame spear they're doing, like, it's not even endgame. Like, I don't want to call it mid-game, because it's really not, but statistically it might as well be. Like, I believe the Bardish +1 is like a 120 or something like that. A lot of endgame spears are in the 160, 170 range. Most of the stuff that these guys are going to be running will be about the 150 range. Yeah, that's probably their... It's just funny every time. Nothing can stand in my presence. Miss. Every time. It only removes one debuff, too, is the funny part. Okay, so they oh no, they did land the shackle. Just lots and lots of items getting spammed for the regulars so far. A whole 1 damage coming out of her. I mean, really, can we just have them surrender at this point? They really don't have much of a chance here. Like, they haven't lost anyone yet. Sure, we're a few minutes into this fight, and they're still there. It's just... I don't know, man. I don't know. Well, he's going to double hit with the procs, apparently. That's something. Okay, they're coming in, going for some slows. Sure. Going for some whips. Yes, 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 you're going to ease somebody, but... do they have a chance? Do they have anything other than, like, healing items to throw around? Yeah, there we go. That's going to be the first KOs coming in. Okay, there we go. They're finally through their defenses now. Even finishers, if they can ever land, are only doing 80. Yeah, they're not exactly holding up too well here. I will say, for reference, by the way, I just want to show this, just to show why they're so freaking bad by comparison. Because, oh wait, this is actually the one before I even updated them to where their skills should be. So they're literally running stuff in the level 20 range. Yeah, that's, what's that, 25's been the highest skill rank so far. So they're, I mean, hell, some of them are just running basic, not even +1 equipment. I think we'll go ahead and call that one there. I did actually make an updated version of this team, but apparently I forgot to actually upload it. So, way to go. Anyway, they have 0 chance. We're just moving on. Alrighty, next up we got Byzantines versus Lotus Knights. Yeah, this feels like it's very strongly going to go towards Lotus Knights. They're built to counter this. I mean, just like every other time, it can certainly go either way. If the Griffins completely overwhelm, they've got a chance there. Again, you've got multiple layers to the Lotus Knight team, so if those Griffins get to the back, they're essentially going to be held down by the casters. The Gunner is usually going to be... the Gunner and the Necromancer are usually going to be the main targets for any flying units, who then end up getting supported by the Lich. Necromancer's got reflect damage on there, which I've mentioned before. This exact matchup has happened in testing before, and I've seen a Griffin essentially get damage countered and then instantly banished by the Necromancer before, so it's certainly a thing that can happen. I'm going to say 80% odds towards Lotus Knights here, but we'll see what happens as we do. Lots of anti-undead damage on them, lots of exorcisms stacked up for that team, but not a lot in the way of actual damage resistances. Certainly one of their big weaknesses is the fact that a lot of their individual units tend to get picked off with higher damage teams. Those Griffins do fit that bill, though the rest of the rest of the Byzantine team does not. So let's see how that plays out. They're going for Blood Siphon. A zombie eating a zombie, yet somebody's getting blood out of that. Sure, if you say so. It's actually unclear. I believe when they show them getting hit, nothing actually comes out in the few games that actually do have a little bit of effect to them. So who knows? All right, yeah, lots of blood siphons coming in from those Griffins. I have seen a situation where they all piled on one Angel Knight and then just immediately took them out before, so that's certainly a possibility. What's Poignant going to do? Oh, lots of Charm. Okay, only one of them landed the Charm that time. Thunderfire is going to do nothing as per usual, but it's just kind of there as a move. Their absolute love of spamming use items is what made balancing a multiplayer, or trying to come up with a rule set for a multiplayer for One Vision so dang difficult, because so many of the endgame items essentially have big nuke moves attached to them. So just, it kind of comes down to who has the bigger use item effects in a lot of cases. Holy crap, 8% chance to hit? That's pretty insane. Yeah, Ancient Knights do seem to have really good debuff resistance, although they did manage to land that 8%, funnily enough. Alright. They're going for that Blood Siphon. Yeah, that's the interesting thing. Reflect damage actually ends up coming in before the actual healing comes in. That's why Blood Siphon was able to get them killed before. Alright, goes for the antidote, goes for that, all that kind of thing. Is there anything that these guys will be able to do, though? Unless they do some lasting damage very early on. I'm going to say they're going to start perma-losing units pretty quick here. Although, okay, some of those stuns are coming in. Alright, Wendigo comes in. Gonna do absolutely nothing, because of course it will. See, part of the reason that I built this ice team and the fire team and whatever else, I want to see, whenever people are submitting stuff, if they ever submit anything, what I really want to see is just, like, interesting applications of weird elements that never get used before. Like, for example, ice, it certainly, I'm sure it's got something to it. I just feel like it's certainly probably the most underserved of all the elements, especially when living in Michigan, because I can't help but look outside every time that it's snowing and think, wow, this sucks, and it's outrageously oppressive. I really wish the snow would go away. I mean, meanwhile, you go to the heat, and it's like, well, this sucks, or you go to a thunderstorm, like, well, this sucks. You go to the ice, and it's like, man, this just feels like a giant claw out of nowhere just ripping your throat out. It's just everything is terrible out here. You slip on the ground and break everything. It sucks. It rips apart your house, and rips apart the floor, makes everything unwalkable. And yeah. Actually, that was another moment that I was really enjoying for Funny Shapes game over there. Just seeing a moment where somebody got hit by so many ice things that they were essentially just stuck in an ice hole and couldn't move anywhere. Like, yeah, that seems like the Michigan experience. That seems pretty legit. So, yeah, no. Alright, so we've seen 2 permanent losses now for Lotus Knights, though. Okay, they just got a big charm, so they might just be able to pull a big spin around here. And immediately throw away those charms because they love to attack their own charmed units. I love how that AI has never been fixed in any games of this genre. What can you do, right? I mean, I guess if they knew how to properly exploit it, that's probably why Bewitch exists, to be honest. It's just like, look, here's something that the AI is not too stupid to abuse. That's probably what makes gremlins so dang scary. Well, fairies and gremlins, I suppose. Like, so when I was going and, like, reviving my original save file, one of the fun moments was having a knight that was trying to take out a gremlin. They got surrounded by 3 gremlins, and they just basically never got around until the rest of the team ended up catching up to them. Because the archer was trying to support them. It couldn't quite kill the gremlin. There was something else that was healing the gremlin, and they kept going and they're using their RT reset move on her, and yeah, she just never ended up getting a turn for the rest of that map. She was so slow, and she just kept getting reset every single time she tried to do anything. And there were just 3 of them hopping around in a circle. And then that exact same experience ended up coming up when doing the solo run. Which actually, now that I think about it, One Vision solo needs to go do Coda at some point, huh? You know, life is dumb sometimes. Like, there's so many hobbies and projects and whatever else. Like, sure, there's this as a bit of a sanity project, but I mean, there's so many like little repairs around the house that I'd love to be doing at different times and whatever else. Everything's always chaotic. What can you do? Alright, so this comes down to exorcisms. Are they going to do them? And will they do them in time? Because they have 2 that are about to come back. Looks like one of them just did, and there goes 2 exorcisms right now. You know, the Eraser doing its thing. You've still got healers on their team. You've still got... No, their Necromancer's gone. But I believe they've still got the staff, and I believe they've still got their MP, so... I'm going to say, yeah, this is probably going to be a shoo-in for Lotus Knights already. Especially with them throwing out casual 400s over there with that spear. So that's actually one of the kind of interesting things about this team. The Fonz is not a particularly insane unit, but he's essentially just got better vitality than everybody else, so nobody ever targets him, so he's just freely running around stabbing multiple units at once, giving him pretty solid DPS for a guy that seemingly doesn't do very much. There we go, more charms coming in. What are they going to do with that? Who knows? Probably something. And they're going to go for the KO on their own Griffin? Okay. Not to speed through this or whatever else, but I'm going to say the odds are pretty much saying that there's no chance for the Byzantines at this point. Like, they're just getting knocked down and exercised over and over. This is certainly not getting any traction for them whatsoever. So I'm going to go ahead and call it there and move on to the next one. That now gives us 3 teams that are kind of in the winner's bracket, so to speak. Now, there's 5 teams left in here. 4 of them are actually interesting. Spork Fury has... We'll give them a chance later. Let's do Red Menace versus Snowflakes next. Alright, here we go. Red Menace versus Snowflakes. Let's see how this one pans out. I'm going to say Snowflakes are probably winning this one for 2 reasons. Well, for one... well, actually, 2 reasons, but both of them are going to come down to the map, and it's just going to come down to range and availability of kills for either option here. So Snowflakes have a lot more, just a lot more options in general on their team. They won't be able to access some of their offensive options here, but there's only one unit that can really target most of their team for the most part up until they get close. Actually, as much as that seems like it'd be a massive disadvantage to the Snowflakes in most cases, this is partially why I ended up picking this map for them. Just because they've got such a weird variety of units and so many of them are melee. Makes sense to have this kind of thing for them, because it usually causes flyers to end up approaching in a little bit closer, causes them to get taken out early, lets them use up some of their use items before they start wasting them on stupid crap later, and additionally allows them to heal off any long-range damage before it ends up becoming too much of a problem. Alrighty, so, we kind of lost a few there. Turns out, when you're going and doing a recording, it helps if you remember to double check that it's actually recording. You know, solid move on my part, but I'm not repeating all that, so let's just go ahead and try to recap what happened here. how'd it go here? So we had Snowflakes versus Red Menace. Red Menace ended up getting knocked out. We had... what was that? We had Corpse NATO versus Zealots. Corpse NATO actually ended up winning that one, so, you know, that's nice for them. Then we had... we had Spork Fury just kind of get a free pass on that one. Corpse NATO versus Snowflakes. The Snowflakes actually ended up getting knocked out there, which left Corpse NATO versus Spork Fury, which you can pretty much assume how that's going to go. So then from there we had Lotus Knights versus Corpse NATO. Yeah, they lost again. What a shocker. So that left us with Dreadnought, Hustle for Sport, or 110% Hustle for Sports, Ogre, Filthy, and Lotus Knights. Ogre, Filthy ended up beating Lotus Knights, putting them into, well, what I had listed here as orange. We had Dreadnought versus Hustle. You can safely assume how that one went. Then we had Hustle versus Lotus Knights. Lotus Knights ended up winning that one, which ended up knocking out Hustle. And then we had Ogre, Filthy versus Dreadnought, which is the one that's going to happen here. So, let's go ahead and make that happen. So, this basically means that whoever wins this one faces the winner of the losers bracket, which is currently the Lotus Knights. Between these two, it's hard to call. Only because, like, Ogre, Filthy doesn't really have much in the way of exorcisms, I don't believe. Let me double check. And I know it's weird that I keep constantly forgetting what exactly is on who, but you have to realize there is a ton of chaos when it comes to actually trying to remember any of this crap. So I'm going to say that this is, like, pretty much guaranteed to go for Dreadnought here. Just because this is literally just a more evolved version of the same idea. They're even running one of the same type of units, with the Enforcer being replaced with Trafalgar. By the way, if anyone's curious, what the hell happened with the teams or the names on that team on Dreadnought there, it's all just Armored Core characters. It's actually a little bit funny because I was thinking about it earlier, like as far as how I would describe like Tactics Ogre as a game in general. And it really is kind of the Armored Core of SRPGs, where, let's be honest, once you, like, if you're first going into it, you're probably going to complain about the balance. Once you get really into it, then you're just spending most of the time tinkering, like, more so than actually playing the dang game. like, you know, going through the multiplayer and just trying to make these dumb friggin' teams, or going through and trying to optimize friggin' 50 different units. Because why not, you know? It just feels good. It just feels good. It feels good to tinker. It feels good to get that little bit of extra, you know, out of your team there. Trying to make that one extra, you know, skill that you weren't sure about actually work. So that feels nice. And yeah. Like hell, seriously, if you want to have a really satisfying experience after you've gone through and, like, let's say you've figured out the One Vision mod and whatever else, you've played through it with One Vision, go back to your very first vanilla save and just look at how much crap you can optimize. I easily spent over an hour of just random time that I was basically sitting around, well, for work and whatnot, getting just optimizing different crap on that team. But yeah, it was a good time, especially because I got to do it twice, because I ended up selling the Vita at that point, and turns out that save decided to corrupt itself, so I got to do it all over again. As you do. Now, I mean, if they have no exorcisms, like, let me double check. I really might as well just call it now, because I am getting really close on time here, but if they have no units that can exercise at all, like, this had radius. That would, I believe that one exercises on hit, and I believe that's actually what I was going for on that team, but they always end up using it first. I mean, I really might as well just call it here, because Ogre Filthy doesn't really have a shot. There's not anything they can do. They don't really have enough, like, they're a holdout team. They have no actual push to them. Trying to think if there is anything they can do. They would literally have to knock down the entire team at once. Or, I mean, I guess they have, if they get a really good Bewitch on, they can get the entire team murdering itself. That's possible. We'll go ahead and count their victory condition as getting that ferry taken out. If they pull that off, there's nothing they can do. Their one way they'd be able to win is probably getting that ferry off to the middle. They get a solid Bewitch off. They knock the entire team out at once, and then drop a Poison Rain on them, and then drop some Dragon Breath on them, and I don't see this happening, I'll be honest. Because they're getting torn apart without any without actually running into logistical issues here. It's just not looking too hot for them. Yeah, they're even having a hard time doing that. Yeah, even getting anybody down's a problem. It's like again, they're like a chokeout unit. They're not. What they need is exorcism, which actually I'm kind of glad about having to remake these teams then. Yeah, they've got no chance. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and call it because they really have no chance here. They're getting their own units exercised. They're getting their enemies revived. They've got nothing going for them. There's no way that they're going to be able to pull this off, especially with the fairy just locked in place there. She's probably just going to get sniped. We're just going to move on to the next one. Okay then, so what I mean by move on to the next one, looking at what's left here, I basically mean that, yeah, no, it's just this one. Because previously there was a matchup between Ogrely Filthy and Lotus Knights. Funny part is, Ogrely Filthy can beat Lotus Knights because they don't rely on zombies at all, which is like their big weakness there. So this functionally just comes down to, to the same matchup that just happened, in which case Dreadnought just ends up winning it. So basically the way that we're going to count this, just due to number of wins and whatever else, first place we have Dreadnought. If you have any idea of a team, just a general team composition that you think can beat this, let me know. I'll make a video on it because I want to see how crazy we can get with the meta. Again, to explain why this works, even though we've kind of already covered it before a little bit, we've got an invisible guy that shoots fast. We've got a tanky guy that basically gets ignored for most of the fight. Both of them building up towards having an instant kill move off of their Damask crossbow. We have a Berserker and a Warrior who essentially go in to cause chaos. The Berserker is mostly there to just knock units around, pretty decent crit rate and stuff like that. The Supple Whip is just there to let her harass at a slightly longer range, and it's just kind of funny to have her use a whip. But both of these guys are expected to get knocked down repeatedly. The two snipers back here are what I would figure would be probably the two unmovable units in most teams, because just two zombie archers like this and snipers like this just make for really, really good kind of flank support, that if anything goes around the sides, they can usually deal with it. Then this guy is just meant to also help with the whole crossbow spamming thing, while having enough defense to hopefully be ignored by most stuff. An obligatory skirmisher, because you got to have one on there. Necromancers for bringing stuff back, and then two more for just suppression. Like the witch is mostly just there for suppression, and then she's here for even more crossbow action. So it's just kind of leaning into most of the stuff that's pretty busted in terms of a meta. Again, strongest meta is still just the Damask crossbow, whoever the hell it's on. But living units, if they're tanky enough to avoid aggro, they're definitely the better ones to use. Because even with high defense, if a unit has anything divine related, they tend to get cut up by that pretty badly. So that kind of gives them a massive weakness, because potentially, even if you have a unit made to avoid aggro, they might potentially attract it anyway because they've got somebody stacking up a bunch of ridiculous bonuses against them. So it's got a weird downside there. Yes, the zombies are usually going to be better because they just come back on their feet, but the mentality is still better that you kind of keep in mind who you need down and who you need to never go down. So this is the best team that I could come up with off the top of my head so far, and I'd love to see what kind of stuff people have in mind for the rest of it. In second place, we had the Lotus Knights. Just go ahead and load those up right here. And now, why are Lotus Knights in second? Well, true, they would have lost, more than likely, they would have lost to Ogrely Filthy there. The thing is, though, they've got more options for dealing with more types of teams, meaning that they actually have won more fights along the way. They did take a loss early on, but they made their way entirely up from the loser's bracket. Basically, with a few tweaks, I feel this could also be a very solid contender for for an unkillable team. because this one is actually one of the ones that has some of the most intentional kind of like fail points of the team. Some of their weapons, like especially this guy with his fire stuff, could definitely be changed out for something else. Many of their songs, there's really only Poignant and I think it was Day of Reckoning, might have been this one, that needed to be used. Or no, not Day of Reckoning, they don't like that one. Which one is it? I don't think it's... Okay, so no Celestial either, so... Poignant and Requiem, that's the ones that they should be using, so they should both be using that. Two of them should be using Rampart Aura instead of just one. The Fawns is just a beautiful, perfect dude over here with all the stabby goodness. Nothing I would change about him. Albrecht over here, like really, really tanky. Cleric actually does a pretty solid job overall. I feel like they probably should have been carrying more items. This is one of the ones that's specifically limited to one item. Between the two ninjas, they probably could have both afforded to be zombies, but they definitely need more vitality on them. The double swords, it's okay. Probably one sword and shield might help him out a bit more. Other than that, I kind of like how they end up splitting up partway through the fight. It gives them an interesting spread of different options. Like, stuff tends to go in the middle between their units and get carved up, which is why I feel like these two specifically need to be something a bit tankier. Maybe instead of ninjas, they could be swapped out for something else. I don't know. Maybe even swordmasters, now that I think about it, because having charmed units in the center might be really handy. Maybe just having fairies with virtuous might be the better way to go. Either way, lots of options for dealing with stuff, but definitely could use some improvements. And then in third place... third place, we've got Ogrely Filthy. They're good against a lot of things, but don't have crap for dealing with undead, unfortunately. It's actually kind of a wonder they made it this far. But it's definitely got some of the more experimental ideas of this tournament. The Enforcer, probably the hardest hitting crossbow user of the set. An Invisible Healer, invisible item support. A caster that is specifically designed to come back and just repeatedly die. It's got ideas. Definitely could use more optimization. But still, they held up reasonably well. Having some frontliner units is pretty darn good. I would say one, maybe two Hydras, two Octopi might be a really solid frontline there. Basic Dragons sort of did the job. They're good at tanking. They're not as good in terms of actually putting out any solid pressure or anything like that. Fairies definitely trump Gremlins at any point, and as much as I wanted this lady to be more of a support, the AI kind of sucks at actually ranking this skill up. Maybe we should try just maxed out skills next time. I don't know. There's too many moving variables to tell for absolutely certain. That'll be that. I gotta go. If you have something that you think can beat the Dreadnought team, please go ahead and post it. Other than that, yeah, tournament's finally done. See you next time.